This is going to be the Summoning Insight mega pre-MSI preview episode in the tradition of the old Summoning Insights, which obviously mainly were for Worlds back then, not least because MSI used to have about 3.5 interesting teams back then. Now they've done the classic thing where, like the Champions League, you let multiple teams in from each region. It's made the competition way better. But obviously the problem always with these shows is why we actually do them is, even though everyone on Reddit and Twitter pretends they watch every region and all the games, no one does. Like there's about 4 people in the history League of Legends did, like Emily Rand, Kelsey Moser, half of them actually like on some Lovecraftian shit, like basically sacrificed their sanity to watch every region. Like I remember one time it was Emily Rand telling me something like, I haven't quite got through to the most recent VCS VODs. I was like, you're going to the VCS? Bro, how are you watching the 4 major regions? And she was feeling bad, like guilt that she hadn't watched all VCS, like regular season or something absurd, like whatever. So I'll give everyone a little bit of secret sauce. Here's the behind the scenes of esports. One, Hi to all the broadcast members who are watching this episode now as your prep, where you haven't actually researched any of those regions. You're going to watch this and listen to what Vestion later says about LCP, probably what Cubby says about LCP. You didn't watch that. You watched C9 versus Team Liquid. You watched Lion versus Team Liquid. You didn't watch any of the regular season games. We all know that. Because actually, a classic tradition in League of Legends, this is actually why we do these shows, is that's what Monty actually figured out at the beginning of League of Legends is. No one can really watch all the regions. So what you do is you get someone who does like cast or watch that region as an expert, and you do a little like parlay with them where they give you some of their thoughts, help you frame things. You can ask them questions based on, well, I've seen this team at if it was like CB LOL, you'd be talking about, I don't know, VKS from last Worlds or something like, well, do they have any of that chaps? So what we're going to do here is, obviously the first one's not so crazy. I'm sure at this point the numbers say everyone watches LCK actually. The craziest thing of all time is LCK back in Monty's day was the like, I'm the niche, like, ooh, to be out there watching that. Now it's like the main viewed region in the world. If you ever see the stats for the T1 Gen.G games, basically breaks all the records. Like I actually even told people last year that when they did that 4th place game for Worlds, that was going to be the biggest game of the year, even though it was like 3rd versus 4th in the LCK. So Orcs, here's the first place we need to start, right, is to set these 2 teams up. Before we even get to these squads, what do you think about the fact that there is no Gen.G? Technically, the 2-time reigning champions. A lot of us, on this show, we thought maybe Gen.G just goes through the road to MSI, maybe they just clap everyone, maybe they even get T1. What do you think about Gen.G not being there?
I think it's weird. I am not sure which would have been more weird, T1 not going or Gen.G not going. I mean, Gen.G obviously reigning champs, but T1 have just been kind of ingrained in so many of our internationals. So like the fact that we had that matchup was super hype and was going to be very exciting. But I think HLE coming in and getting the MSI, because what happened last year when they were 2-0 up against Gen.G, got reverse swept and then swept in the lower bracket, that was brutal. And I feel like we had an interview with Zeus like a few months after that, and he was saying like that kind of stuck with them for a while. So I think for HLE's sake, it's good that they managed to find their way in. But yeah, I mean, Gen.G has had a rough year. It has not been the idealistic circumstances, and it's not been the clean sailing we normally get, because especially with how it started, first stand, they were just winning every series. It was like, oh, when are they going to first lose a series? Yeah. And then the answer was against G2 at first stand, 3-0, which is such a brutal defeat. And I know a lot of people think of Gen.G as like international chokers, but really Worlds has been the major sticking point. Yes. You know, the 2-time back-to-back MSI champions. I don't think anyone went into first stand thinking they were not favorites and thinking that any team but BLG had much of a chance against them. And then this happens, and now we're in a position not even go to MSI. It has been a underwhelming year considering the standards they normally have.
Because to pivot, now let's talk about T1. Here's how I want to set it up. This is where I wonder when people are doing their narratives, do they ever stop and do a bit of accounting and go, wait a minute, that narrative doesn't make sense in terms of all my other narratives? Because what does everyone always claim if they're a T1 and a Faker fan? They always go, hey, I never said he's the best every game, and obviously they don't win LCK, but at Worlds, bro, it's Faker and Worlds, you know, it's the narrative. But then what's bizarre is they do this every year. When they then win Worlds, they then reset the firmware and go, they're the best team in the world. And then for MSI, they go, hey, they could win it. So they haven't won MSI in donkey's years, bro, like literally 9 years. So I want to know on the T1 one, right? Is this a T1? Because it is a different T1. The pairs flavor is clearly different style to Gumayushi. Do you think this T1, I think some people are going to pick them as like a sleeper favorite, like maybe BLG because of the WE result, or maybe because actually everyone except HLE, they look good against. Is T1 actually a true favorite? Do you have them as like champion? Do you think they have an extra flair like they do at Worlds?
I mean, I think they're definitely competitive and they're very good, but I would struggle to favor them over HLE and
Ooh, okay.
BLG. I think one thing is that they had a really hot run towards the end of the regular season where they won a massive win streak. They took down Gen.G, and Gen.G had beaten HLE like in that sort of time period. So they looked phenomenal. But I think a big thing is they were playing so heavily through bot because with Pays here and Doran as well, I know Doran was here last year, but they sort of said, this is how we want to play. Our two solo laners aren't that strong in lane. That's just an absolute fact. But our bot lane has Keire and Pays has been pretty formidable. So they would like, we're going to play through bot. We're going to pick winning bot lanes, which was the meta in the regular season. And that's how they've kind of dictated games. But like going into road to MSI, we saw changes come in that I feel like favored HLE. Like we saw, nerfs to enchanters, we saw buffs to melee support, grub spot buffed, and we even had games in Road to MSI, HLE against Gen.G, HLE against T1, sorry, where they were playing to roam and play through top instead. And I think that if we'd been on the meta that T1 was succeeding on, where they're playing through box, I think that fit what they want to do really well. I'd feel much better about them at this MSI, but I feel like the way this roster wants to play, like if you compare to when they had Zeus and Gumayusi, who coincidentally are on HLE, it was very much like, we can put a lot of tension towards top, Guma's fine weak siding. And that's exactly what HLE did when we came to Road to MSI. They just were, oh, that's the meta now. We have Delight who can play engage supports again. Fine, we're chilling. So I think that's my concern for T1. Even though they're obviously a formidable team who made it here, who beat Gen.G, I think just the meta shift isn't most favorable for them, especially when you look at the likes of BLG also have really strong solo laners. And Viper's been a little bit quieter this split, and On has been monstrous. So I feel like both HLE and BLG, I could imagine playing that way and really vibing from it.
Come on, Yamato, where you at on the T1? It's the question everyone has to answer.
No, I agree with the notion is like, if we think about what the current meta is, it's like I've just said it so many times, so many insight, it's always about how the jungle support drive the game. The big reason why Gen.G was so terrible, their jungle support, they're like repellents in terms of how they play the game, and they couldn't catch up to how people kind of controlled mid and then spread into other sides. T1's biggest strength and weakness is the fact that they are very different from everybody else that I would consider being top 5 at this tournament, in the sense that they are driving the game through bot lane. When I was doing my pick'ems, I was very surprised to see that Pays had like the highest first blood percentage out of anybody, because usually the obvious choice is to pick a jungler, but most of the fighting for T1, especially the first 5 minutes of the game, happens around bot lane. And if we think about Viper's role or Gumayusi's role on their team, their biggest games are happening now when they play MF to dominate the lane. They pick Jhin, they play Ashe, and then you see arrows from across the map. You see like very strong isolated play where they get their farm. And this is very, very polar opposite to how Pays is playing the game and T1 is playing the game. And I think it's due to, as Ox mentioned, I do think the solo lanes of at T1 in terms of laning and the ability to pick counter picks and to be a real win condition in counterpicking, this is not currently what T1 is. Faker has a way, and Doran has a way to be useful. I think that's their biggest strength. It's like being useful in disadvantageous positions. Faker roams the map a lot and tries to find angles, whether it's on Talia, Rise, and Twisted Fate, to kind of roam into side. But I do believe strongly in the idea of playing through mid, so I think that will be the problem. But if for some reason they manage to lean in heavier into this bot side play and the other opponents need to conform to that, I do think that the other teams have some catching up to do, because I do think being the awkward team in terms of playing differently in a tournament can be a strength. But the main thing for me, especially when I think of HLE and BLG, because that's the contrast here, because I do think T1 is better than G2 and top esports, is how will the meta shape up? Will it be very similar? I think mid lane might be different. That might be an opportunity for like a team like HLE to be weaker, because I do think the meta is just right, and I do think that their players are very, very meta dependent. And what makes them work so well right now is that everything is falling into place. Engage support, Zeka's champion pool, and Gumayusi playing the so-called weak side ADCs. But if T1 is a powerful force enough to make their play work, I do think that's that's the way for them to win the tournament. And then there's like small tidbits, like very commonly now we see swaps into grub situations. Suddenly, if that is a part of the game, a player like Doran is going to have opportunities to breathe and to connect. The faster Doran is connected with his team, the better it is, because if he plays isolated for 20 minutes against Zeus and Bin, it's going to be a problem. The faster he can connect, the better it is, and I do think that T1 will live and die by how good the draft is and how good Keire and Owner is going to be able to play in the end. But Owner has been up and down, but his internationals are good. And I think if the angle is for them to win, it would be that their uniqueness will be their strength rather than their weakness.
By the way, I'm with you on the solos angle. The obvious main concern if you're T1 is look at how strong BLG and HLE solos are. If people didn't watch LCK this year, we can talk about it in a second. Zeka was really good. This is one of the best splits I think I've ever seen him play. So one last topic on the T1, and then let's talk about the other teams. Right, an obvious angle, if we're going to, in that way, show that there's areas where T1 might be underpowered, the obvious most OP angle they have in the game, Orcs, is they have Keire. Like, and if it's going to be fucking Roman supports, bro, this is where this guy can make players. Like, that. I do think the underrated part of the world, because the world's stories for T1 always get folded into the faker narrative, and certainly he is making epic players at Worlds and shot calling, but I always think you've got to also have the pieces to win the game though. Like, to me, having Keire is one of the OP things they have every Worlds. It feels like every time it switches into a Keire meta, or he has a pick someone else can't play, a Bard, a Pike, whatever. What do you think about the Keire angle?
I feel like he just goes through periods where he is just the best player in the league, and he had that when they went on this win streak earlier. He was just having these games where he was just completely carrying, completely defining them, and obviously the team was playing heavily through bot. But something I really think about is when it was 2023 Worlds, and everyone was playing melee supports, and Renata was like the most OP pick, and people were picking like Alistair into Renata for some reason, and then Keire was like, no, we can play range supports into it. And that kind of angle makes me think that, like, even though we've seen some of a shift, like a little bit of a shift towards like more melee supports and more roaming towards top side, we've only had a very small sample of the new patch, because as far as I know, other regions win on 2311. It was only wrote MSI. So for the taster, it looks like it favors HLE and BLG, but I could easily see we get to MSI, especially since T1 have a lot of time to play through it with going through play-ins, and they kind of go, no, actually, even though we've had these changes, we can just brute force through bot anyway, and then, as Yamato was saying, swap towards top for priority for grubs. So I'm interested to see what their take will be on it, given that they're going to have more time to look at it, because I think what T1 has always done really well compared to other teams is reevaluate whether it's mid-tournament, mid-season, because this is a team that has so many ups and downs. Like, you compare to Gen.G, it's like you're riding the high, then Worlds comes and that's the struggle. But T1, I feel like at a lot of times will kind of go, okay, this isn't working. Like, what are we doing, guys? What do we need to sort out? And I'm interested to see their take, their approach when we see them at MSI.
It's why this was brought up, I think, by, I can't remember if Yamato said it, but this is a detail I was thinking about in the last episode. That's actually one detail that's actually kind of bizarre about the format, because in the format, T1 has to go into the plane. Well, if you think about T1's core historically, they're the team that figures out the patch the fastest. So actually giving them a few extra matches, even if it's the Gen.G you lose or whatever, you could argue that that plays into their benefit. Like, you might even argue last World's getting to play the match against IG first, help them figure some things out before they went into the tournament. So what's bizarre is actually that's a rare case where maybe you don't want to skip to the main stage. Like, that could be real, right? Like, that's like a historical trend.
Just simply looking at the World Championship last year, it's like they had close games against very weak opponents.
Yes.
Their start, like, I don't know how many times, like even years prior, I remember when their opening match was against Team Liquid, and Pioshik almost like,
they almost got smacked. Yes,
just 1v9 and a BO1, you know. Yeah. Definitely, I think getting 3 BO5s under your belt to start, I think is a good thing. I think a very important detail too, to add to the layer of just T1 and their identity, is they feel to me quite one-dimensional, and that is always a tough thing to solve when it comes to BO5s, because maybe you can drive the game through bot lane two games, but to do it in 3 when everyone's aware, I do think that the flexibility of just having really strong players in every role is such an advantage, while I think that the lack of flexibility is going to be a danger for T1, because they need to win series quick. Because even though we think Gumayushi, Viper, and these guys might be able to play like a very, very strong weak side, just as well, they can just pick a Kog'Maw into Lucian Milio and play and win the game if the matchup allows it. And we're even at a point where Zeus and Bin can slam a Scion and play really damn good. So it's going to be a very, very tough wall to climb for T1 either way.
I mean, that's obviously the other problem they have. It's like, this looks like the least flexible version of T1, and then they're playing in HLE and BLG. Super teams, as you say, they can in theory go anywhere. Like, one interesting angle to start the HLE discussion. By the way, everyone jump in whenever you want on this convo. But I'll say this, right? One thing I actually saw was that people know that guy on Twitter. I referenced him on a past episode, that guy called TAC_01, who does like a bunch of stats stuff on Twitter. And he's one of those people where the interesting thing is, I think it's his like website or something that did this. They've done that thing where they've come up with like a formula that tries to evaluate how good a draft is. I'm assuming it's based on like champion priority and stuff. And here's what's interesting about it though, is first of all, as a little aside, they actually claim based on that G2's like the best drafting team in the world. So banter in itself, I thought I'd bring that up. But for HLE, I will say that when they went on their streak, that was another thing. It was on their thing, it was they were scoring very high marks on draft like percentage basically. Whereas for example, like Gen.G had some crazy ass bad ones, as you saw when they got eliminated. So the thing I wanted to bring up was this angle. When you've got a super team like they have, and as I say, even traditionally semi-weak positions like Zeka have actually had mega splits. I also think you can spin that the other way though. Like I can also say this, well, yeah, no shit, they've been drafting great. If their champion, if their players are in form and they hit the meta, surely if you can play the meta champions, you can have some awesome drafts, aren't you? So what do you think on the HLE angle? Because I actually feel like, Orcs, here's how you know that it's only, I always say this, T1 has carried the narrative of LCK is better for so long. Because notice when T1 isn't the main team out of LCK, suddenly people are open to the idea maybe VLG's the #1 team in the world or they're the favorite for this tournament. I think traditionally, you should just say it should be HLE. They finished first in the road to MSI. They beat T1. They were the best team at the end of the split for the last few weeks. Like, I feel like people are hesitating a bit on HLE. They've got that Gen.G fear of like, I don't know if I can commit to that. What do you think? Is HLE the best team? Do they draft the best? What do you think?
I think HLE's form has been pretty. I mean, road MSI, that series against T1 was pretty impressive, and I think they kind of rode the meta shift well. But also, I think my main concern with this roster, because like to dial back to the start of the year, changing your jungler, I feel like has such an impact on a team, and losing Peanut and then getting Kanavi, even though like in terms of player strength, you still got a really strong player, but Peanut was such a defining feature of how this team played. And for those who aren't aware, this team came 10th in the LCK Cup, and like a big part of that was the format kind of messed them up. They weren't the 10th best team in the league, but it also shows to even end up in that position, they were struggling. Like Kanavi was super over aggressive. The team was struggling to match that. There was times where like Zeka was like, you know, running over to try and help Kanavi and kind of ignoring everything and then just like dying as a result. But the form they're in now, it feels like the team has really gotten into the same mindset with Kanavi and they're on the same page. And then Zeka's form has just been insane. And my big concern, because last year, the mid jungle from HLE was kind of weak, but I think it was because Peanut was struggling because it's so hard to do well in the jungle when your mid laner is not doing well. And Zeka was just the weakest player on the team by far. And to me, I was concerned, like, is this just a fearless thing? Is this never going to get solved? Because Zeka's always been more of a specialist. And even though, like, in my mind, when we had pre-fearless, it's like he could play all of his champs really well, and then he would have a couple of mages he's practiced on. And that's all you needed when it wasn't
have to pop
fearless.
1-0 game in a series, basically, right?
Yeah. And then when we came to Fearless, he just seemed like he was really struggling. But now, like, he's had big games on things like Victor, Cassiopeia. It feels like he's widened the pool. And I hope it stays that way, because obviously it's hard to keep all these picks practice. But the form he's in now has allowed him to flourish alongside Kanavi. Kanavi's just been taking over the league. So I think this team's a really good form. And I do think that this team, we saw this a little bit last year after they lost a road to MSI. It felt like they mental boomed for a while, and it wasn't until like playoffs that they came back. But I think they are a team who, if the vibes is good, they're going to play well. And I think they're having redeemed themselves for last year's road to MSI and made it as first seed. I think they're looking like, I mean, it's hard to say because I didn't watch as much LPL compared to, because, you know, as we said before, it's at the same time as LCK. It's hard to see it all. But I think HLE are my favorites for the tournament based on what I've seen.
Do you concur, Yamato?
I think it's good. I think it's close. I can easily argue for HLE or BLG from where I'm standing. For me, what just edges this out is just Knight's form. I think that the big question would be just with Zeus or Bin, who's going to have the better tournament? That's something that can be easily, that can go in so many different directions. Like if Zeus comes out as the best top lane in the world out of this tournament, then I think as an outcome as well, HLE is also going to win. I think the main worry for me with HLE, maybe 26-13 is not going to bring that many changes, but a Syndra buff, a LeBlanc buff, I think these are all changes that benefit Knight. Zeka was never a Syndra player in his lifetime. And I think that HLE, this split, the meta has been absolutely perfect for them in many ways. And I do think that if there's a team that has potential fragility when it comes to meta shifts, whether it's, let's say, the jungle role kind of changes where like Poppy is buffed and we move more in the direction of it's like Poppy, Skarner, Sejuani, and suddenly it's like more supportive. I'm not saying that's going to be the case, but maybe if it is the case, then suddenly Kanavi and his biggest strengths are going to be lessened. Right now, I think that the meta is in a place where all of the biggest strengths of the HLE players are being highlighted, which I think is obviously super good and doesn't mean that anything has to change. But if it does, I favor BOG to come out cleaner in the landing of that outcome because I don't really see a world where anyone on BOG necessarily has a flaw in their champion pool. I think they have a very, very good spread of what they can play. And I'm still talking about very, very small percentages here. Like if I would like give people like the team's win ratios, like percentage chances, just spitballing, it would be like 33 for BOG and then like a 30 for HLE and then maybe like a 24 for T1 and then the rest of the percentages for everybody else in the tournament. I think this probably... I can't recall, maybe since maybe 2023, maybe it's in hindsight, but JDG did look quite fierce coming into that tournament. I don't think we can look at a tournament in this way and be like, oh, this is very, very up in the air because no Gen.G that has been super dominant through and through makes it very unclear who it could potentially win. But what I like about MSI in contrast to First Stand is the fact that all of the teams actually get like 1 month of preparation. Which to me makes it the most honest and most competitively thorough tournament in terms of everyone really, really bringing their A game, because I don't want to sit there and think about logistics and the problems of logistics and all that jazz, jet lag. Should we speculate on this? With this one, there's none of that. So just pure gameplay, which for me makes MSI the best tournament.
What's wild is I actually think there's a really interesting HLE set of narratives too, because if you imagine, like, I actually do think that people are doing it wrong. I notice people are doing that thing where they take one. I would just say genuinely, I think both teams, BLG and HLE, you just deserve to say they're the 1A, 1B. I don't think either's a favourite. I don't think we can know because we've never seen like this HLE play that BLG. That BLG does look insane. They were awesome in their own way. So it's one of those ones where I'm not even trying to like evade the question. I think genuinely it's rare time that they just both deserve their own element of being number one. So I'll give you the reason why if HLE was to win, I think it's crazy. Because the saddest thing about that LCK Cup is I'm a dedicated watcher of the LPL and I've tried to like proselytize it to people who only care about LCK. And so obviously I've been telling people for years, look, I know at Worlds it's shit because he was on top esports, but actually Kanavi is insane. You guys forget he's Korean too. I even used to tell people for years, a bit like Scout, even though that one didn't work out. Like, imagine if these guys ever came back to Korea, imagine how dope it would be to have them back in the league. So when he arrived, he didn't do any of that shit in the fucking LCK Cup. It was bombing me out. Like, he wasn't this. If people don't know exactly how Jun just won First Stand and how Skewmon played, when they were super early, they're just aggressive. They set up the jungle camp to mega early. The other jungler always has to deal with them. Kanavi can just be a demon. He's actually done it this split. That's what's so dope. He's fine. Whatever adjustment period it took, it's come online now. And for example, if people are thinking naively and they didn't watch LCK, like G2 fans, like, we got Skewmon, mate. If you wanted a jungler to fuck Skewmon up, this is the guy, mate. This guy's going to be mega. And then the Zeka one's even doper because remember, he's like actually every 2 years, this guy has to win a bit more respect from people because he went from how the fuck did that guy win Worlds, even though he was insane at that Worlds 2022, to then like, well, he's just like a one trick, isn't he? To then like, holy shit, he's fucked around and won LCK, like bloody hell. And then he won First. It's like eventually, even though we all thought he was going to end up as one of those like just peaked at Worlds, he's actually going to probably end up as like a Hall of Fame fucking mid laner. Like he could win MSI right now. And again, not just because he got his champions, it's fearless now, bro. He could just win it just by being the best mid lane. It's possible. What do you think, Hawks?
I mean, I think when going to the Kanavi point, to me, when we had that JDG run at MSI, I think everyone was like laser focused on Ruler because it was like a very AD carry centric meta.
Yes.
But I didn't think Ruler was actually like that much above the other AD carries at the tournament. To me, what really stood out was 369 and Kanavi and their roles in team fights. Because like the way Ruler was playing in team fights, it's like he was listening to payphone, and then the other AD carry is sweating because he's got 369 on Scion up in his face. And I feel like Kanavi, his team fighting is just like on another level. And what he was demonstrating in those games, and you know, when I was casting him in the LPL, he'd always have so many pocket picks, bringing out things like Shaco. I think he's a really fun jungle to watch, and really a player who can just take over games. And with the whole Zeka point, I think Zeka is a player who like has his ups and downs in terms of form, but like he won his first Worlds he attended, and this is now his first MSI. So if he manages to do that as well, it's like we had that comparison. We had that comparison when he was going up against, I think it was Chovy, and they had like the graphic with like all the titles.
He won one time ever. It was the World's one.
It was just Worlds.
It was the stat was something like 15-1 or something absurd like that, wasn't it? It was nuts, wasn't it? And then he obviously won that match. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So I think he's a player with a lot of clutch factor. And there's that quote from him, you know, when things get hard, I get harder.
So unfortunate the translation in it. I know. Bloody hell. I know. All right, what about this then? One last thing we'll do on this topic. You said you didn't watch LPL much, like, but what about, I assume you watch a bit of LEC since obviously it's your native region. People are going to, sadly, like I set up there, I'm not even hating on G2, it's a really good G2 team, but I do think people are going to have unrealistic expectations because of first stand. Like their whole shit's like, we can just beat anyone. It's like, what do you think? What would you expect if G2 plays, for example, these LCK teams?
I think G2 are a team who can punch up, and we obviously saw at First Stand, they had some cool takes on the meta. In fact, we actually had the Lulu Cogmore Shen draft. HLE brought that one out in the road to MSI, which was kind of cute because that was obviously what G2 played. Yeah. I think the thing that really makes me hesitant in this tournament is the fact that we have 3 like strong competitors for the title. And even if T1 are a bit weaker than HLE and BLG, it's still 2 really strong competitors. So I think even if G2 punch up and manage to take down one of them, is that enough to win the tournament? No. You have to be really good to win this MSI. There's a lot of strong teams. And I think the prospect of them outmatching all 3 of those, or at least like 2 of them, depending on the bracket, that's a really tall ask. You know, they had a great performance at First Stand, and I think it'd be interesting and fun to see them in these series, and if they can punch up. And I do have more faith in them than top esports because of history, but I think it's just really hard to see them winning, even if I think they could win a series against a big team.
Okay, right. To end, I want each person, because obviously you might can revisit this later, but Ox, who's the MVP of the tournament?
Ooh, I gotta go Kanavi. I think.
Okay, bold.
I think I'm, you know, even though I agree it's really close between HLE and BLG, I'm going to lean towards HLE. And I think if HLE win, Kanavi's just going to be putting on a masterclass. I also think that's the role where if they beat out BLG, that's where they have the edge.
Okay, I'll save that for, you might can answer that in the next segment. Okay, thanks, Ox. What we'll do now is we'll go to a brief break where we bring on the next guest. The next guest will be... I think it is Vestion, isn't it? Yes, Vestion, who will obviously, he's from like Oceania. He'll talk about like LCP and things like that for the playing. Shout out to Orcs, right? We'll go to a break now. Now, I know that you out there are gamers, which means inherently you are both lazy and you seek efficiency because, again, you don't want to put in a lot of effort and learn really hard things. So when it comes to being healthy in life, who wants to eat their vegetables? Who wants to, like, investigate all supplements and health things? So it's the same with MSI, right? We've all just been watching our region and then LCK. Who wants to watch the minor regions? Who wants to have to do that homework? Who wants to have to go through the labour and make yourself... Well, you don't need to. In the same way as we got Vestion here to just make it simple and package it all up for you in one nice, neat, easy-to-swallow package. That's also what AG1 does for us because you don't have to eat your vegetables in the same way. You don't have to worry about supplement stacks. And if I supplement this thing here, does it mean I have a deficiency here because my body takes from that to create that? You don't have to worry about that. AG1's got you covered because if you take AG1, it's basically a daily health drink that combines all of the following. It's got your multivitamin. That's like learning how the draft works, like what fits together and synergizes and what's bioavailable, etc. I'll tell you what, everyone's ass is bioavailable to Kanavi at this tournament. Then you've got probiotics, prebiotics. That's right. They're not just pro, there's pre as well. There's all sorts of biotics. The point is, don't worry about it. Just take this and then you'll be enjoying it. You don't need to worry about that. Then you've got elements like superfoods, antioxidants. And guess what? All of that is in one scoop. And you just add 8 ounces of water. You drink it. It's all taken care of. You don't have to worry about all that science. That's some nerd like Vestion here. Let them worry about the science. You just enjoy what they produce for you. And so this next gen formula of AG1 has 75 plus ingredients backed by 4 clinical trials. It's shown to support clinically gut health, fill common nutrient gaps, and improve key nutrient levels within 3 months. So how about, I like to use stuff like this just as a way to, you just take the scoop in the morning, you don't think about it again after that. Also, it's really easy when you get in the habit, have it after your coffee, have it before your breakfast, after, you'll figure out where it fits into your daily routine. So visit drinkag1.com/summoning and get a free morning person hat, I'm not one, and a free AG1 flavour sampler in your welcome kit with your first AG1 subscription, which is apparently worth an $82 value. So that's drinkag1.com/summoning. Honest, apparently it is. So, okay, let's do it, Vestion. As I said, I set it up pretty fairly there. Let's be real, most people, if they're not from Oceania or Taiwan or whatever, they don't want to watch the animations. Yeah. What they want really is, like, I think the last 2 years are the best example. They want to know, is there a team like a CFO? Is there someone who can actually do a big result? Is there a team like, it could be GAM back in the day, who could do like a cheeky upset? They want to kind of know, like, how do I get into this? Think of it like if you were recommending an anime someone's never watched. What's the hook? How am I getting in on this? So start us out. At the moment, there obviously is no CFO like there was before. There isn't the same thing. What's the initial hook? What are we getting into on the side here coming to MSI?
Yeah, okay, so I'll be 100% honest, because I think, like, I'll draw back to last year when I was in here. Obviously, I came in, like, kind of firing, right? Like I said, things like CFO can take a win over T1, which I think I was somewhat proven right. They lost a 5-game series, but, like, did very well. I unfortunately can't say that this year. I think, like, we have, in terms of a storyline in the region, a similar storyline where Team Secret Wales have gone undefeated. They are once again representing us at MSI. They're following a very similar trajectory as CFO, but they are just very clearly not CFO. They play a very different style League of Legends to CFO. They play essentially what you'd expect out of a Vietnamese team, right? Very, very scrappy, very, very fun. That is one thing that I think everyone should be excited for, is our representatives are exceptionally fun, but they will, I would be very surprised if they came anywhere close to the highs that we got out of CFO, unfortunately, because I just think going top to bottom, they are weaker in general. I think maybe their top laner is arguably better in Pun. But then other than that, I mean, honestly, within our region, there's no one you could get to compare to Junja. So already you're in like a very, very sort of backwards step in terms of the regional play. But they are a lot more fun to watch. So that is probably the most exciting thing coming into this. And the same can be said about DCG, though unfortunately I think DCG might just be the weakest team at the tournament, which obviously I don't want to say, but like they live and die by Pop9, who is very willing to just completely grief a game, but on the other hand, he'll also very easily carry a game. But yeah, I can't give this as exciting a take, I guess, as last year, because I do want to obviously be honest to the region.
All right, what about, though, like on this angle, I think the most interesting thing to me is more like, how do you think other teams will match up with them? So as an example, obviously we have like Karmine Corp, for example. Remember, Karmine Corp have had much international experience. Will a team like that, can Team Secret Wales upset a team like that? Do you think they have specific lanes they can go into? How do you shadow box them?
Yeah, for sure. I think ultimately Team Secret Wales should be good enough to beat probably everyone in the play-ins bar maybe T1. I think ultimately they aren't a bad team by any stretch of the imagination. They're just not CFO is sort of my point. So I think like in terms of our best team, if you put them against any of the teams in second seed, I think they should be favorited in general. And you could even argue with the teams in first seed, like Lion, I wouldn't say would win, but I think it would be a competitive series. Furia, I do think we should be expected to beat. And so that is kind of my angle. See, the problem we do have is our best player, the best player on that roster, far and beyond, is Histo, the jungler. He's also the youngest player coming into the tournament, which is kind of an exciting thing for the region as a whole. So similar to Hongq, I guess, in terms of very, very young player. He was actually younger than Hongq last year at Worlds, so he was the youngest player at Worlds, obviously, there too. But this guy's really, really exciting. The problem is that, at least in my eyes, jungle is arguably the most stacked role at this tournament. So like when your best player is your jungler, but other teams also arguably their best player or the strongest role potentially is the jungle position. It kind of, at least in my mind, makes shadowboxing a little bit harder, right? Like, you imagine you're going up against Hanwha Life and you've got to try and take down Kanavi. It's like, is Histo good enough to do that? I mean, like, let's just be honest, probably not. Same as like Jun for BLG, Skewmond as well from G2. Like, these are really, really good players. And while Histo can make the games very exciting, I don't know if he can give a consistently high level to actually be able to challenge those guys. So anyone with a weaker jungler, though, I actually expect them to somewhat be favored. They're very good at playing their mid-jungle sort of duo. And also Pun, as we saw last year, at first stand, is really unique on his champion pool, which can take a lot of people off guard. We saw at first stand, I don't know if you noticed, but like anytime there was an Ambessa, Pun was really eager to just lock in a volley bear into it. And it's something that he's done regionally quite consistently, and he makes it work pretty well. So there is some exciting things about that. It's really hard to judge this team, though, because they live and die by the flip, and that's the same as last year. Okay. This year, however, they weren't challenged. So they were able to just like hands gap pretty much everyone in the LCP.
Here's the thing, Yamato. Bearing in mind, I don't follow, obviously, like this level of League of Legends at this point in my career. I actually always want it to be, funnily enough, GAM for me was always the actual like blueprint. I want teams that are like the lower teams. It's very unlikely they're just going to play ABC League of Legends and just be better than like Chovy and fucking Kanavi. Like these names that we're saying are the 10 out of 10s. These are like the FIFA fucking superstar players. So I want people to play a little bit randy or to play some crazy style or go for, if you have a pocket pick, definitely pull it out. I want the underdog team. What do you think, Yamato? If you went to Worlds in the past, that's one of the things you worry about with a smaller region team, right?
No, I remember, like, we always had Flash Fools as the career killers, right? And the maybe lesser known story, but also a hype story was just AHQ, right? AHQ. I remember the mid laner was always playing the craziest shit. I remember how he solo killed Faker on Fizz into the Kassadin matchup. It was I appreciate teams. It's like I appreciate teams that carve their own way. Which brings me to the follow-up question, right? It's like in terms of where we have the bracket, how it's set up, which we can also complain about. I will just complain quickly the fact that being number 1 seed, it comes with a punishment because you get to play against top esports or T1 most likely. Here you go. You do well at first hand. Here you go. And then Lion and of course HLE, they are second seeds, which means they play against the third seeds, which would be then Furia and Team Secret Wales. And for me, the matchup I'm very excited for is whoever is going to be playing against Lion, because Lion, like regionally, they have figured out a way how to beat everyone in North America. And I don't think that's going to translate super well to international play because they are very slow. But of course, they have inspired running the show. So in terms of to additional layer of shadow boxing, in terms of Team Secret Wales, how quick are they playing? And in terms of the matchup against Lion, I don't know how much you've watched of North America. That's another matchup that I would be intrigued to hear your thoughts about in terms of how that could potentially go. Is that where Team Secret Wales could get a win?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Team Secret Wales is extremely explosive. That's kind of how they play League of Legends, right? And I think as well, somewhat this year has lent itself towards like if you are better laners, you're more likely to win than in past seasons. And they are in general very good laners, and they play very fast off that. Right, Histo is really good about sort of identifying what lane's winning, what lane they can win the game through, and punishing it really, really hard and fast. Obviously, the jungle champs that allow for that are, the things like the Vi's, the Jarvans, the Zins, the very classic picks, but he plays them very, very aggressively. So yes, they play a fast style of League of Legends. They're not like Taiwanese PCS teams in the past, right? They were always very slow. They try and mimic the Koreans. The VCS teams, man, they are just trying to get down and dirty from minute 1, and they will not stop. So, like, they're again, similar to GAM that we've talked about before. It's not like, okay, we're behind, we're going to do nothing, hope to scale. It's like, oh, we're behind, let's fight to try and, force an error, and we can maybe come back that way. So I do think, again, I think the level of play in NA is like, it's not terrible, don't get me wrong, but I don't think it's leaps and bounds above Team Secret Wales. So I do definitely think we can beat Lion. I don't think it's something like last year I'd come in and I'd say, yeah, CFO are going to beat them. I can't do that this year. But I do think it's a matchup that we can absolutely succeed because, again, I think like most people would identify Inspired being the best player on Lion. Well, it's matched by Histo being the best player on Team Secret Wales, and he does play a very, very fast style of League of Legends that quite often does force errors. And I think in general, that's something that NA has historically struggled with year after year, is if they're forced to do things, they're more likely to make an error, and that's kind of where the game breaks open.
And just as a follow up, sorry, Thorin. Just as a follow up, because you mentioned Pun, right? With his counter picks with the Volibear into Ambessa. Because I'm just trying to pick apart what I see on Twitter, right? Like those whatever's true and false. That's what I want to clarify, because I never trust Twitter. You know, no matter how many tweets you have about your own region, I gotta. You're the man who knows it all. A lot of people telling me, or not telling me specifically, what I was reading is that Hero is a very dangerous player. We have another situation where a team has two top laners. Is that something that they utilize? Because how do they actually like put them to use, if at all?
Yeah, I mean, they don't really. I think Hero might have played 1 or 2 games this entire year. It is pretty much just the Pun show. I think last year, Team Secret Wales were utilizing the top lane swap, similar to CFO. Like, CFO kind of left a blueprint with driver rest, and other teams tried to follow suit. This year, they haven't really. Pun has been he's been really solid. Like, I think you'd argue him as the best top laner alongside Florin, who is going for DCG. And so he has earned his place to just start. He's also got such a wide champion pool, which is something that CFO didn't have last year between their 2 top laners. That's kind of how the power of the sort of interchangeability came through. Whereas Pun's very happy to play carries. He's very happy to play off meta, like bruises like the Volibear, for example. He's played a set game. He's played Olaf. And then he's also happy to just play your stock standard Ambesses and Rumbles and what have you. So they don't really have a champion pool issue. And also he is just playing so well, they only pretty much use Pun.
Okay. What about, though, an interesting thing to me was, just from quickly looking at the Gamepedia, at the beginning of the year, Deep Cross Gaming was one of the best teams. They were in position. It's in this split, though, like they actually had like some massive problems. It was only in the playoffs they picked it up and had this strong run. So what's going on with them?
Yeah, it's been really weird. It's been a really, really weird ride for DCG. So they came in at the start of the year, and how they got into the LCP was they qualified through the promotional relegation series. They managed to promote, and they spent all of last year this exact same roster together, right? So they'd had an entire year of playing together. They come into first split, and they are still the exact same team. Every single other team in the entire league pretty much has changed all of their team. I think that one exception is Team Secret Wales, where they only swapped out Taki and brought in Beer. So it's like a minimal change, right? It's a support player, obviously impactful, but you've only changed one key piece. So DCG came in with a massive advantage of they've actually played the game together a lot. They've played an entire year together. And I think they really utilized that. They had a good understanding of how they wanted to play League of Legends, and other teams struggled to deal with it because, again, the level of play in the LCP isn't the highest. I think especially this year it has gotten a bit worse with, the big names from Taiwan, Vietnam, and whatnot retiring. And so, yeah, that's kind of how they found themselves so successful there. Split 2, it started to get worked out. Other teams have spent a lot more time together. Other teams had some roster upgrades, and they were definitely struggling during the regular season. But somehow, it didn't necessarily, to me, feel like they leveled up. It somewhat felt like, to me, that other teams cracked under the pressure, got a bit worse during playoffs, where they came in as like 6th seed and just destroyed everyone that went up against. I think they had a 5-game series against GARM, and that was the only series that was close, other than sort of the upper bracket finals, grand finals. And so it was kind of surprising. No one had them as favorites to go. I think most people would have said GARM or SHG were going to be going as that 2nd seed. But yeah, everyone, I don't know what it is. Florin admittedly got a lot better in the top lane. But other than that, it just felt like everyone else collapsed almost. And it was quite surprising even to, those of us that actually avidly follow it.
Right, being as we know they will just directly play against KC in the first match. What are your thoughts on that? Like, is there a specific player they can attack or exceed, etc.?
Yeah, I mean, it's a hard one because I think right now, the best performing player on DCG is probably Florin. He's typically, for the entirety of this year, was a really weak laner, really good team fighter, but actually this playoffs, he was just good at both. He was solo killing his lane pretty consistently. Even in counter matchups, he was just like getting it done. Bakana is like, okay, you gotta that's probably arguably, one of their best players alongside possibly Kallis, but it's like, okay, really, really good player. Are you going to find those advantages? Bakana's probably would be one of the strongest top laners in the LCP had he been there. Hard to say he would. And I have to point this out, like there's no escaping it. Everyone needs to know that this bot lane for DCG is absolutely diabolical. Like, okay. they have this obsession with picking enchanters when Chelsea is known for and historically always been really good at hook champs. Nautilus,
Right.
Thresh, Blitz, insane at them. But they keep picking enchanters. They keep looking awful. And like their last game, their game 4 of the grand finals, their Ashe, so Fang on Ashe was like, I think it was 0-8-0 at one point of the game. And that's one point of the game was like lower than 20 minutes in. And that is an issue. And it's not like a one-off where he's like having a bad game. Like obviously this was the worst. But he is very, very consistently making poor decisions that oftentimes completely throw the game. Like there was one game against Ground Zero, for example, where they are just massively far ahead, 8k gold ahead, and he just randomly W's into the enemy base, dies, and lose the game from it. So I think this is a massive problem. I think their bot lane need to just like mad up it almost like, okay, they're going to pick enchanters. Let's just pick what we're good at. Like stop picking the Karma, stop picking the Lulu. You look awful at it. Just pick what you're good at and play your style of League of Legends. And if they don't do that, I think they're just getting smashed, to be honest. It's been really clear even in the LCP. They pretty much only have one on melee supports. So yeah, I hope they find like sense almost and do this, but if they keep picking enchanters, I think they just lose the game through bot.
Obviously, you are allowed to watch other League of Legends. Who do you think wins the tournament?
Honestly, I mean, Natural Instinct, I suppose, would say Hanwha because they had a pretty good run in the LCK. But I want to say BLG, somewhat because of what happened in the LPL with like WE coming and like really showing up a bunch of teams. And to me, a moment like that almost forces the teams at the top to reevaluate and level up, right? Because like we should not be losing to this team, and so it sort of in my eyes should light a fire underneath them to actually be like, oh, we can't get complacent. So I want to actually say BLG would be maybe it's a hard guess, but that's what I want to predict.
And then as a result, who is the MVP?
It's pretty hard to look past Knight. I think I would have to just naturally, I mean, Knight or On, but I'd lean towards Knight probably.
Okay, and then I guess a mini version up. You sort of said it earlier. Like, which of them are you picking from Team Secret Worlds to be the best from the LCP? Then will it be the top player? Will it be the jungler? Who would you side with? If they have to have a pop off performance, who's it going to be?
Mm-hmm. It'll be Histo. It'll always be Histo. I think Pun has the opportunity to do it if he gets the freedom in draft, if he gets counterpicked. Like maybe he could do something pretty cool because he has shown the ability to do it. But just the most consistently pop-off player on that team has been Histo. Almost since Worlds. I think Worlds last year really leveled him up as an individual. And I would, out of everyone on that team, I by far have the most faith in him.
One more thing I just wanted to, on the topic of LCP, just throw in there, just because I have you here. What happened what happened to Doggo? Where's Rest? Where's Driver? What happened to what happened to them? I understand JDG stole most of the big guys, but what's the story of the guys that remained?
Yeah, I mean, obviously JDG came and gobbled up the two best players in the league, so that never makes it easy. CFO just apparently dropped Driver, and there was sort of words that came out about, if you guys remember the series in MSI against T1, where we got to Game 5, Driver looked like the best player that series, and then he subbed out for Game 5. So apparently that was a personal thing where he was too nervous to play, which is why Rest... Yeah, which is why Rest came in, played the Driver champion of Ornn, and just got absolutely destroyed by Zeus Thorin's Jace. And so, like, Rest got a really bad name for that, but it was like not his fault. He was just stepping up to the plate when the other guy theoretically should have been in. So I think they dropped him. I don't know if it's specifically because of that, but in my mind, like when you have something like that, it's a pretty negative effect. It doesn't matter how well you play the first 4 games. If you aren't willing to play the 5th and most important game, it's a pretty bad thing. Karmine got eaten up by Brazil. He's now back in the LCP as of the split though, so he went to VKS.
Who replaced Trimby?
Correct. Yes. Yeah. So he went there. And Doggo remained on the CFO with Rest, but the pieces that they picked up just weren't it. Like they got Shadow, and I'll be honest, Shadow is just not Junja. Like I'm not saying Shadow's bad, but Junja is just like, at least in terms of the LCP in his region, he just absolutely dominates it in a way that Shadow didn't even come close to being able to, not even close to mimicking it. So they really struggled. They also got a random Korean import Pangyon in the mid lane. He was not Hongkyu, obviously, but also, there's language barriers issues there. He was getting kind of dominated in lane during game, and so they just had an entirely different dynamic. Doggo was also just getting pissed off. Like, you could see in his interviews, he would say things that are just outwardly,
right,
you'd consider almost flaming his team for like being so poor when he expects better of it, And I don't know, a player of his caliber and what he did last year, I think somewhat deserved. But yeah, CFO just getting eaten up and Doggo and Rest staying, they weren't able to even close to mimic that roster.
No, I think the reason why it's fair to just temper expectations a bit more, even though on the past episodes when they had people like Gen.G and Honkyu, you were willing to go be bold and say they'd win, is because people have to think about in smaller regions. If you have generational players, you can't have them get scooped up by a bigger region. Like if we go back in time and we already took Maple and Carson and Sword Art off Flash Wolves, but there never would have been a Flash Wolves, would there? If you'd have put the next best players in, you wouldn't have had those incredible results and chances. That what was cool was that at that time the generational players stayed there. So while I can't blame Honkyu, he's obviously going to try and go win the LPL and win Worlds or something. It is going to take a hit to your region if you lose talents like that. I mean, as you said, the player you're picking now only became a pro last year.
Even the contrast, right? It's like, imagine the LEC, it's like, 2019 G2, and it's like Jankos and Caps are leaving and they get taken to Korea. And it's like, the whole region will just be kind of shattered, It just has such a sprinkle effect on the level of everybody in the region for sure.
Yes. Yeah, and the hard part about it, I think, is that apparently they don't count towards the LPL salary caps. So, like, you get a player like Junja Honkyu, who are arguably at the top of LPL even. They don't count towards the salary cap, so you get to invest more into the local players.
You're even incentivized to sign them,
Exactly, and they speak Mandarin. So it's like there is just nothing but benefits for LPL teams. And if we ever have, any of the players from the Taiwanese scene come up and look like a shining star, it's just like yoink, and it makes sense for them to do it, but it just sucks for us. We have a bit more safety with the Vietnamese, at least, because of the language thing. I think it's a lot harder to incorporate a Vietnamese person than someone that speaks your language.
Okay, right. Nice to check in with the smaller regions as usual, find out what people think. And we've got a good sense at least of who to follow in this competition. Right, we will now go to the next guest. We'll take a little break and then we'll be joined by Nymaera to talk about any region because he just follows all of League of Legends because he wants a job, doesn't he? So, hard worker. Right, thank you for coming on, Vestion. See you later, mate.
Awesome. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thank you.
It's an evening and it dawns on you. You feel like you're in the mood for a chicken ratatouille. You call your butler, Alfred. Alfred. No response. And then you realize you're not a damn billionaire. You ain't got no butler. And the closest thing that you can have is, of course, Factor meals. Ready-made meals that get delivered to your house. They are freshly cooked somehow. I don't know how they do it. Freshly cooked. That can, of course, just fit any diet. I like the high protein, which means that every meal comes with at least 30 grams of protein. You can do low carb. You can fit it to any purpose. It can be GLP support ready. It can focus on your weight loss. You can focus on certain proteins. You can choose. I mentioned the chicken ratatouille. I'm a big fan of chicken, so that's what I always go for. Every meal is, of course, crafted with functional ingredients, lean proteins, colorful veggies, whole foods, and healthy fats. Factor bans 175 plus ingredients, no artificial colors or sweeteners, no high fructose corn syrup, no refined seed oils, just nutrient-dense food. I think it's crazy to me. The craziest thing for me is just the fact that it's so damn consistent. Obviously, they need to take produce from different locations and source it differently depending on where they are, because obviously it's not just one factory sending food all over the world. It wouldn't be as fresh as it is. I have tried it in Texas. I've tried it in Germany. I've tried it in Sweden, and the consistency is really, really good. And something that is unique too is that they cater to what is local. I ate a lot of fish in Sweden because we have a lot of fish in Sweden. I ate a lot of the steaks over in the US, which was super nice. But whatever flavor profile you have or any diet needs that you have, they are ready to support you. So it's just ready in 2 minutes. You go into their website, boom, you click your choices, your options, your add-ons to round out your nutrition, and you're good to, of course, go. They have also additional options like green juices to peanut butter energy bites. So whatever you need, really, simplify your life and streamline your nutrition. I don't know how many times I've tried to cook something. It takes me 1 hour to go to the shop, 2 hours to cook, and then it takes me 1 hour to clean, and then I eat it up in 5 minutes. Save time and save money with Factor. Plain and simple. Head to factormeals.com/LFN50 off and use code LFN50 off to get 50% off and a free daily greens per box with a new subscription only while supply lasts until 09/27/2026. See website for more details. That is, of course, factormeals.com/LFN, 50 off.
By the way, that's even one of those things where if you ever see those YouTube channels where it's like, it's easy to make this recipe. You're like, yeah, cool, right, I'll follow it all. They go like, add in your potatoes, got them, okay? And then it's that moment when they go, now put in a bit of garlic powder and then put in some turmeric and say, what's all those ingredients? Like, you're already assuming I have a fully stocked kitchen with all the, when they go, and now we're just going to make our sauce. So that's Worcestershire sauce with tomato. Again, you've got that's about 15 things I didn't buy. So if you don't know the best thing about factories, you just pop it in the microwave.
When you're in Berlin on Sundays in Germany, shops aren't open either, so you think you can hop out to get something and just nothing is open. It just messes with me.
Yes. Okay, obviously Nymaera is joining us. We're just making it some bizarre incestuous episode where everyone's together. It's all.
What do you mean you had another podcast, Thorin? You can't do that to us.
Listen, when it comes to podcasting, I'm a womanizer supreme. I'm like James Bond. I pick people up, I let them die. I drop them. I'm with a new one next week. You never know. I just keep moving on, and then sometimes I even bring them back. Like, you up? And then they're on the show suddenly. I mean, if people don't know, we even did one mad episode of The Four Horsemen. The show's called The Four Horsemen. It was just me and Monty. It's all just been called Summon Insight Redux. Like, what were we even doing? Like, just the two of us talking. And also, Monty, we could have a Discord call if you want, mate. If it's getting that desperate, you don't have to construct some awkward show to talk about esports with me. Just tell me you love me, that we're friends. Actually, I'd hate that if someone did that. It was my friend. Don't ever do that. That's purely for the character. Okay, here's the thing, Nymaera. Obviously, you aren't anymore just so what's going on in Japanese League of Legends guy. You actually follow all the regions and you've been on many shows. So on this one, I'm just going to open it up. We can go anywhere on this one. So what I want to know for you, what is your most interesting thing coming into MSI? What are you most focused on? What narrative captures your imagination?
Most interesting thing? I mean, I guess the spicy one is, if BLG were an LCK team, would everyone think as lowly as them?
Oh, I like the framing. I like the way he's put the onus on like the LCK fans. Like, is it just Chinese people? He's on some like,
okay.
Yeah.
Not that, okay.
But I mean, in a way that is so true. People are just automatically going to go because they didn't do it in the LCK. It doesn't count. Like, I actually do think it's only the fact that it's people names like Zeka that's stopping people just saying Italy's the number one team in the world.
I think there have been a lot of people who've watched LPL playoffs and have taken sweeping conclusions off of what is a very nuanced discussion about Team WE's crazy run of form in playoffs. Yes. But that was lightning in a bottle, and I think it succeeded for specific reasons. Whereas now people have, I think, had the wrong takeaway of like, wow, BLG is a hyper-flawed team. They do have flaws, don't get me wrong, but I think they're taking away the wrong flaws and saying that, well, they're just going to fall apart to all of these other teams because they lost against WE and they went to 5 games against them too. So what came into my mind is, the way that people are speaking about HLE and of course T1 as well. I think they're given so much more room for error and a bit more, momentum behind them than pretty much any LPL team is. I mean, obviously BLG is still on the golden road, folks. They're still on the golden road, and I'm happy to talk about pretty much any region out there. But I figure let's start with LPL because that's where I've spent 600 odd games watching this year as well. And I think that while it is close between the top teams, and I know Orcs was talking earlier, and I know he's talking about, he edges out HLE. I know that Keire said on stream as well that he would take HLE over BLG, but it's close. I also think it's close, but I'm edging towards BLG because I made a tweet about this the other day, but largely the point goes, you can have your nuanced conversations about inter-team matchups once you answer 2 very important questions, and you have to answer both. Can you deal with Knight? Can you deal with Bin? And I think every team at the event has one of their solo laners which can't consistently deal with their opposing number. And I think even with HLE on Zekrom in crazy form right now, Knight caved his head in last time he was on good form at Worlds 24 in a perfect meta for him with like Sylas, Akali, Aurora, Ari, all of these great champions.
Everything, yeah.
Everything, yeah. So he had all of his champions in it. It was pre-fearless and he still got his head caved in by Knight. Knight was incredible in that HLE series in that Worlds 24. And not that Zeka was bad, it's just that Zeka couldn't stop Knight becoming a win condition. And I look at, most of the teams across this tournament with mid laners, I'm like, well, Caps did it in first stand finals largely in lane. He actually did very well there. Great, cool. Maybe G2 can manage that there. They couldn't deal with Bin at the same time. T1, I think Faker, if he manages to find some form again, which based on his recent trajectory, his laning phase has been actually the weakest part of his play, which could be a real problem against Knight. Okay, well, that could be an issue too, but if he steps up in the way that Faker does internationally, perhaps they have a better conversation there. But we're also in a non-lane swap meta with Doran versus Bin. Historically, that has gone awfully for Doran. Now, if they find a way to get lane swaps back again, even then, I don't think that covers you like level 1 to 6 really in the same kind of way. Maybe it does for Grubs, but as you were mentioning earlier, Yamato, but I think that I go across pretty much every team in the event, and I look at all of these things, and I say, okay, yeah, Viper's not on great form right now. On's still a little bit of a flipper too. Shun's in a bit of a weird spot because the team doesn't enable him in the way that other teams are enabling their junglers. He plays for his lanes, which makes him, I think, look worse by comparison. But I don't think any team at MSI has a consistent answer to both solo laners of BLG. And I think if that were the case and they were an LCK team, people would think much, much more highly of them, and they'd be viewing them as favorites.
Come on, Matt, what do you think of that?
No, I'm with you on the point of like people just drawing the wrong conclusion about what WE did. I think the lack of interest behind the story of WE is classic. You know, people don't watch LPL and say, "Oh, look at this," and then that's where you have them, right? I think the main thing for WE, what they do better than anybody else, literally better than anybody else in the world, in my opinion, is how they construct the first 3 minutes of the game.
Completely agree. Yes.
I think that when it comes to BOG, I think they are very, very momentum driven in how they play, in the sense that their jungle and support in 98% of the games have full control over the enemy jungle and support, which allows their lanes to just play however the hell they want. And when they do, they beat you down. They're going to just casually get a CS lead. They're going to be very honest in terms of what the matchups are. There was this one game in particular I remember where Bin was playing Jace and they had Ryze on mid in good matchups, and they were dying on bot, they were dying to some ganks, but it just didn't matter because the leads were just building and they were chipping away on the towers, and then eventually they just broke the game because of how good the BOG solo laners are. And I think WE was very special in the sense that they were the only ones that could attack Shun in a way that made the solo lanes of BOG somewhat vulnerable. I think that Monkey was the only one that found like very, very unique like gank patterns through lane to kind of disrupt the lane. And whenever BOG couldn't build that momentum, then they would actually lose to a very decisive WE. In my mind, I think that story in itself, super impressive, but I don't think that there's any team at MSI that can cause that damage to BOG's early game. I think when it comes to the early game structuring, I do think that BOG with Shun and On are just the sharpest. If there's anybody, it would potentially be like Kanavi, because he is very accustomed to doing that. But I have seen Kanavi play against BOG both regionally and internationally. No, well, not internationally, but I've seen that matchup many times. I remember when it was like the triangle of top esports would beat AL. AL could beat BOG, but BOG would always beat HLE because they would match them on that beat. Of course, HLE is very different in terms of what the team makeup is, but in terms of Kanavi's approach to the jungle, it's somewhat similar, and I feel like Shun is very comfortable there. I think in the context of the rest of the matchups, I think also there is a very, very clear thing for me when it comes to BOG is that throughout this entire year, they have been capable of matching whatever their opponents are. Similar to how we wouldn't judge G2 completely off of how they almost lost to MKOI in a BO5 in the playoffs when they had to catch a throw from MKOI of 10k gold lead. We would still believe that G2 would go all the way and win. And even though the series was close against KC, I don't judge these teams closely in terms of what they can do internationally because there is a clear ramp up in terms of the intensity towards play. And I think that for me, the number one thing that is so unique about BOG and also somewhat to HLE is that I feel like we have these somewhat super teams, obviously super teams in terms of what the rosters are, but with details that show that they are clearly coached. And that is very new, especially with BLG, because Danny has done something with this team, in my opinion. BLG, like Danny has done something with this team, Home has done with something with this team, and that to me raises my excitement for their consistency when it comes to MSI when they're going to match their opponents.
The curse of Big Way was lifted.
Yes.
I'll give you an example. One of the reasons why I think traditionally people always favour the LCK, obviously it's not even just the whole fake team worlds, like obviously it's been Gen.G at MSI the last few years, is I think people traditionally use these stereotypes for the LCK and LPL, and as usual, there's a grain of truth. They think of the LCK teams and they think, right, once they figure out the draft, they go quite formulaic with the draft and iterate what they think works, and then their style of play traditionally is have good macro and play to that strength. And I tell you what, that's actually a pretty good flaw of how to win League of Legends games. Whereas traditionally, and BLG do somewhat go into this, because I'm going to spin it into a question to Nymaera, is obviously BLG has that classic Chinese teams like to fight and flex their solo lane muscles and use their biceps. And obviously, we even had that Jun moment where after game 1 against G2 at the first stand, he was like, let's just beat them with our hands thing, which is playing right into the meme of every fucking Chinese jungler. So here's the question, Nymaera. Is it the case that like BLG is like going to have to like outhand people and use their brute force strength? Are they still the bad late game team? Do they have the macro elements to be the best team in that sense?
They are better at late game than they were, but their late game still has some issues. They can still definitely panic when something goes wrong, but it's not... they're not as fragile as they were. In fact, I think one of the biggest changes which has happened to BLG, in fact, so I had a call with Dagda earlier this week because he was cluing up on MSI stuff as well. We ended up talking about stuff like this about 3 hours. So it's hard to condense it down into this. But
fucking record a podcast, whatever.
Exactly right.
Just seen the unmonetized content there. You fools are bring up conversation in private. What are you doing?
I know, right? Well, that's what we've tried to do over time, isn't it? But over the last few years, BLG, the biggest difference from, say, BLG 24 to now is the resilience of Shun and On is miles better than it was. Right. Where if shit went wrong, they are more likely now to recover from it. Now, that's not 100%, waterproof, because we saw the W series and Yamato covered that very well in the way that WE, they grouped early, often, and then just constantly hit you in the face, even if they're only playing on one lane. And then, BLG would sometimes panic and find themselves in very bad positions from that. And basically, no other team plays like that in the world. I don't think anyone's going to snap to that kind of style at MSI, so I don't think it's as relevant for this conversation there. But I think, Shun coming back to this team is the spiritual heart of BLG. We saw what happened without him in 2025. And I'm aware that, he fell apart in summer 24. It's not like he was always in good form, and he always had that aspect for them as well, though. I think in 2026, I don't see Shun falling apart in the same way. And that's very important because I think the meta right now is so jungle-centric. The way that HLE got good in this year, going from, bombing out in LCK Cup to now, is they just decided to play Kanavi style of gameplay. Kanavi would invade back earlier in the year, and his lanes wouldn't be there on the right time, and Kanavi would die, things would fall apart, they would lose. Now when he's going on the right timer, people are moving at the right time to support him. It supported the entire style of play. Kanavi has bent HLE to his will, and it's worked out very well for them. Shun on the other side, though, is the opposite. He's doing what his laners want in the same way. Shun is the one jungler, I think, in the LPL that I will trust to not play for jungle himself, fall a bit behind, even take an early L or an early, camp steal away from or something, and still play the game out the way that it needs to for BLG, because there's solo laners that then set up for success in the same way. So yeah, when it comes back around to that BLG conversation, I don't think they are just about, just brutalizing them, and I don't think they're still bad late game in the same way. I think On as well has been magnificently consistent compared to, again, 2024, or even, 25 he started gaining some consistency, but it didn't happen internationally. But On has gained that consistency now too. So addressing the bad late game portion of it, and some of the, the problems where if BLG got taken off the rails a little bit, what would happen? Well, it would crash horribly. And one of the other things which I'd going on to the second part of this, which is in terms of the macro style. So on the podcast that we do, Thorin, Shut Up and Scale, we talked about a number of weeks ago, there was a topic I brought up where I get very frustrated when people talk about people who fight all the time being bad macro teams. There are situations and there are teams and there are metas where fighting is a good thing to do. And I think BLG is the better style of that, where they understand where they have a cooldown advantage or you've overextended and they are just punishing. It's not over-aggressive, it is actually the correct thing to do, which just so happens to be aggressive at that same way. So the way that BLG gives themselves ways to do this is they give themselves just little, actually the way that Dagda described it, I liked his way of describing this when we were talking about it, it was just little nuggets they give themselves on the map with a half starter play, where actually, Knight will half push in, dip into Fog of War. They don't have to do anything with it, but it gives themselves the option. Or they'll have themselves the extra global of Shen from support or something like that, and he'll be able to turn up to a play. And in various other ways, they'll reset around the map or contest pockets of vision, or Shun will get out of vision as well. And BLG will give themselves lots of opportunities to say, okay, I'm going to just try my luck here. And I know I have the extra resources that my team can commit to the play, which is another reason why I think that Viper plays so much utility right now with Ashe and Jhin. It allows their mechanical brawl players to go in towards a very mechanical style of play, but just know they have the extra backup there if they need it as well. So behind this, the easy to communicate, BLG are good individual players and they'll brutalize you individually, there is some depth to it as well. think that's also why BLG are one of the best side laning teams in the world. I think they're definitely the best side laning team in the LPL. I know that they did fall apart a little bit at that with WE again, but I think WE are a bit of an anomaly there. But so behind the upfront easy statement of, oh, BLG will just outplay you mechanically, I think there's a lot of depth to it too.
Okay. What about I tell you what, we can go in, let's do the like favorites thing now and shadow box them, because obviously the other problem you tend to have is people either specialize in the LPL or the LCK. So since I know you watch the LCK too, how do you actually contrast like HLE? Like, for example, in theory, now's your time, Nymaera. Like, actually, Kanavi is the truth. He actually's done finally doing in the LCK what everyone hoped he would if you were an LPL fan. And obviously, he was Korean the whole time. So I always thought, what if he ever went back? What do you think about that angle? Like, this is one where people might think only a first standard, think, well, Jun was just the best jungler, wasn't he? Like, he was just too strong. So, what do you think about this Kanavi angle, this HLE angle?
I mean, Kanavi is fantastic. And again, if we go back to the first thing I said, how much better would have he been viewed in his career if he played his career in the LCK playing like he did? If you just switched the regions and just had similar results, would he have been viewed differently? Because, of course, he ran the LPL jungle for years and years. Him versus Tien was an interesting matchup, of course. And, of course, I know we've not talked much about top esports, and I get that they're a distant second because of their historical record. But, yeah, Kanavi has a whole lineage now of a style of play where he always wants to be in the enemy jungle, always wants to be ahead on farm, and will try and bend his lanes to get to support him in that way in the same, on any team he's on. Back in 2020, he would invade and he wouldn't have support and he would die. And it really took until about 2023 for him to get a little bit more poise about how he entered into those kind of jungle confrontations. And I think he's continued on that route very, very well. And now he's brought that over to HLE, who have now managed to support him in that style in a way which they didn't earlier in the year. However, when it comes to Kanavi versus, these other teams, I think when I look at LCK, I think T1 and Gen.G really, really struggled with the early jungle meta in playoffs from the series, which I've reviewed anyway. And again, like I didn't watch as much of the regular season to track the jungle pathing there, because it was in the heat of LPL, just every game happening all at once. But from what I saw from those teams, Ono was misjudging his early jungle clears in a way that he wouldn't have done at peak, and what I know Dona to be at peak. You're thinking about the amount of times where he was dying on Krugs or invading into topside jungle. It was taking a little too long, or the timing was just a bit off, and he was dying, maybe getting a camp steal, but it wasn't worth it after that point. And of course, I think one of the greatest failings of Canyon is that Canyon has not been able to find presence in the early game throughout a meta which seems so jungle-centric. Canyon just didn't manage to slot into that. So I look at the two series which T1 played in, against the two kind of prospects for MSI, and I thought, well, okay, we're seeing very different ways of the jungle working out, because Kanavi did have that down pat. So when I'm looking at Kanavi versus those two teams, I say, well, okay, Kanavi's playing the way that LPL plays right now in terms of its jungle meta, and the way that I think that jungle should be played, which is very heavy presence, lane setting up jungle for success, getting a good read on first clear, good level 1 wards and level 1 plans to set that up too. And I don't think in recent games T1 or Gen.G really pushed that on them enough, and I don't think they were that comfortable for them. So now the problem with shadowboxing is, okay, Kanavi is good at this style, but has he been pushed on that style in a way that he would have done against the LPL junglers, which I think are the best in the world right now? I think that Jundra on a good game is incredible. Obviously, he rolls badly a lot of the time too. Tarzan, if you go watch the JDG Anyone's Legends series from regular season, like the 3 games are three completely different early games with two, very, very, very good junglers kind of trading early game leads against each other. Tien at the start of the split, awesome at this jungle invade style. You've got so much of these teams which are set up for success like that. I'm not sure that HLE have actually been tested on this style as recently as I would have liked to, where compared to LPL, where it seems like everything is about jungle. Like I said, BLG perhaps a little bit of a blip there, but of course the early jungle is so much of a factor for it. So I don't know if you'd agree with that, Yamato, in terms of, do you think HLE has been pushed in the same way in the early jungle? Because in my read, I think LPL pushes their junglers harder at that early phase of the game.
No, I'm with you. I think with even just the Monkey example, I think Tian is also someone that is just underrated when it comes to this competition. I agree with the notion Junja is best. I do think this is something where definitely the LPL junglers tend to bite very, very, they take their whole mouth and bite, and sometimes to their own detriment. But I do think that form of resistance is something that carries weight in terms of what you are ready for, because I do agree. Like I think something that makes the LCK a little bit weaker is that I do think that the bottom half of teams try to conform. They try to be what they can't be by trying to mimic the teams above them. And over in the LPL, we have teams that try their absolute hardest to be as awkward as possible, because teams tend to be a little bit more player-driven through their stars, like Monkey and the rumors we hear about how he did the coaching and the scrims, and he also cooked the food, and he read them bedtime stories, and then he jungled as well, like all of that.
And then, oh, dude, that story's crazy, by the way. For those of you that don't know what happened to WE mid-split, basically Monkey felt like he'd lost the trust of his teammates, so he benched himself, and then had to go on his monk mentality journey, regain the trust of his teammates, and come back in, and then they went on their playoffs run. Genuinely legendary shit.
By the way, that filler episode of the anime would have been fire when he goes off on the spirit journey and finds himself again, the inner monkey within himself, and then he comes back and wins the playoff. Of course, that'd be amazing. That'd be mega.
Just like a million Kung Fu Panda clips for that. Just monkey.
Yeah. All right, what about this then, Yamato? I want to ask you this, because at the moment, like I say, I think what makes this tournament utterly unique is this isn't the T1 that's won Worlds, because Pierce has completely warped the team, and then also there's no Gen.G who was always dominant in LCK, and so you could confidently look at them and go, they should win MSI. I actually think this is the most wide open MSI ever. So I have a question for you that goes like this, Yamato. Are you scared that Hanwha Life can have a letdown? Can they shit the bed? Are they a definite elite team? What do you think?
I think it's possible. I think it's possible in the sense that we've already seen a bad version of this roster. It might feel distant, but it's not so distant that this was a last place team. You can argue about how the format didn't give them a chance to get better, but still, last place, even at your worst with this roster, shouldn't be possible. And I do think that I've mentioned it already, but I do think there is a sense of fragility to HLE and their ability to, of course, match themselves to metas, because every single one of these players have had periods where you're like, oh, what the hell is going on? You're just picking the wrong champions, playing the wrong way. Whether it was, periods of Zeka just not fitting in the meta, Delight at the beginning not playing the range support, which is something that he's improved on. Gumayushi has had periods, Barrett being never in internationals. I'm talking about a real darkness scenario here. Gumayushi has had periods in regular splits where he's performed very bad, where Corki just W with Valkyrie into the enemy. And sure, you can paint a story like this for many players at this tournament. I think that's fair. But I do think this HLE roster in particular is meta reliant in order to be potentially the best in the world. I think if for some reason, let's say T1's way of playing has an impact and they need to shift to play a more range support heavy style, even though the Light has been playing more range supports, I'm not fully sold. There's games where he picks Bard and I'm like, ooh, you're getting away with this because your team is damn good, but ooh.
Zeka, compared to his Camille, which was really, really good.
Yeah, just in even Zeka. Maybe this tournament, maybe suddenly the changes to Syndra and LeBlanc are going to be that impactful that it shifts the meta just a little bit. I can't imagine him playing these champions, and him, when we think about past international competitions, I am thinking of a Zeka that obviously, when it came to the BO5s, outside of the one where he did the DRX when they got beaten by BOG, when BOG went to the finals, the on-the-fly adaptation through a tournament, I think, is crucial. Because maybe some team is going to bring out something unique. Maybe G2 find an angle, maybe a champion that, is very important to play in the meta. And then suddenly, I think other teams will be quicker to adapt. Well, by other teams, I mean BOG, because I don't think there's anything out there that they won't be able to play. And then maybe HLE will have a harder time to adjust. And that will be my only concern of a nightmare scenario where the meta shifts so heavily from what it is that they don't have this steady footing that they've had throughout the split. But this is still a big ask because I don't think the patch is heavy enough. But it could happen. It could happen.
Another thing I think is interesting, and obviously we can bring in some more of the T1 angle here, is this. Normally, one of the reasons, it's funny, people don't get this. The only reason I normally actually pick against T1 in tournaments is because how many times, be honest, how many times has Faker looked like he was semi-washed in the split, barely get to Worlds, and then at Worlds make the epic plays? But I'll tell people the way this works. That works every time until eventually it just doesn't work ever again. That's how sports works. That's how league works. So normally it's not actually hating against T1. If people don't know, I was always a Zayas fan when he was on the team. I actually have always been a massive Keire fan, and I actually think last year Orna might have even been the best jungler in the world. So some of their players are mega. But here's the cool thing. I think this is actually a really dope scenario we've got going into this tournament. I'm going to set you up here, Nymaera. If you all did this at 2024 Worlds, you were all wrong, but it's all right. You're allowed to be wrong. I allow that. I'm a very magnanimous person. You all did your tier lists. Yamato did it too. You all mad overhyped On, because that was the old On. And tell you what, he was off at that tournament. So it didn't work for you. It's all right. I understand, LPL follower. I've done it with Kanavi 8 million times, done it with Jacqueline 8 million times. This actually might be the one time where when I do the usual, yeah, but they've got Keire on T1. Who can match Keire? Nymaera can On match Keire.
Yes. Yes, he can. I think that On is at peak someone that will actually give Keire a pause for thought. He has similar champion pool where he's playing just mad dark technology shit. Like he has taken the essence of Durnby, who's now retired for a second time, and he's taken it within himself. He's even placed stuff like Jack's support in solo queue right now, like into the Camille support, which was also a big pick of his as well. The
Skarner one was pure banter as well.
It was Skarner. So funny. Yeah, I mean, I know that was played in LCK like a week or two before, but the funny thing about that is that, again, actually, that Skarner game is a great one to use as an example, because I talked about BLG before and how, the resilience of the team has gone up and actually resilience of On has gone up. If you look at that Skarner game against JDG, game 4, it was the kill game, the one where they knocked out JDG. He goes 0-3 after kind of straight running it a couple of times on Skarner. Now, if you watch back to last MSI, the MSI before that, even in finals versus Gen.G in 24 MSI, when things started going wrong, On was like the heaviest anchor. He was the heaviest anchor. In this game, though, on the Skarner, he turns it around and makes 2 or 3 game-winning Skarner support plays, which is, a sentence I never thought I'd say within, League of Legends generally, because Skarner support. But he has been that kind of person that has understood how to stop the bleeding for once in his career, and then actually make some big plays after that too. And I think that Shun has done something similar in jungle, but I think On has been more pronounced on that role. And I think that, if the meta does go towards roaming supports again, more utility on bot lane, focus on top side, I think that's fantastic for On. Because I think both HLE and BLG have a similarity in their way that they're putting their AD carry on a bit more utility. I know that, again, like, Goon was playing a bit of Zyra and the Cogmore. I actually think he looked worse on those games, right? He made those big missteps going to late game. But I think that BLG did the same thing with Viper. I think Goomer and Viper, weirdly, in a bit of the same spot. Maybe I'll take Goomer over Viper, but we're still seeing the similar kind of mindsets between the two teams in terms of you want to rely on high-impact champions to get out onto the map. I also think On has the enchanters, though, in a way that Delight doesn't. And then if you compare that back to Keire, it means that On is a bit more bulletproof to the meta changes, in the way that Yamato was saying that actually maybe a bit more meta dependent. BLG, there's nothing that On can't play. I've not seen a champion I'm like, I don't want him playing that. He's one of the best Karmas in the world. He's a very good Lulu on his day as well. He's an incredible engaged player. He plays Shen. He plays the Camille. Everything, right? So he has everything across the whole spectrum. And I think it'd be a great matchup versus Keire. Then the question then becomes about, well, okay, who are you going to support? Because I think it's much easier to play that supporting role when you have, Knight caving someone's head in, or Bin on Gnar or Jason getting 30 CS leads and winning the game through slow bleed out through side lanes. I think that On has been very good at roaming to those lanes at the correct timings too. So yeah, I think On is a great litmus test. I will say if On doesn't have a good tournament and we just have one of these nonsensical dips in form, I think BLG goes down with him. I don't think they can win a tournament with a bad On, much like we saw in various tournaments in the past, right? But if On does turn up to the play in the way that we've been seeing for the entire year so far, then yeah, Keiri's got some real contention in his role if Keire also turns up as well. I think this won't be just a blowout. Oh, if Keire turns out, T1 win, because that's something which T1 have done in the past too. I think if On turns up, actually they can go toe to toe.
By the way, I'll even throw this out there because I actually said this last year before MSI and it turned out to be bang on cue. I'll tell you the one area I actually think is the danger sign for people who don't watch the LPL and have just heard the stories, which is you've heard that actually this was a pretty bad Viper split. He hasn't really had his game together. He even had to do that weird thing. We had to come back to Korea and he's had some sort of health issue or something, right? One thing I just want to point out, I said this last year with Gen.G and Ruler is, yeah, but the problem with having a player like that who then gets carried by his teammates to the tournament is, what if he just turns up? It's one of the greatest players of all time. What if he just turns up and has a great performance? You saw that last year. Ruler just came alive at MSI. It was like way better than you expected because his teammates got him through the hard time. So if Viper ever actually turns up at this tournament, it could get really expensive because right now we're all shadow boxing the diminished one where the bot lane isn't the power strength of BLG. It's about the soul lane, etc. I think that's an interesting angle too. You never know
Yeah.
with players like that.
But it is worth noting that Viper did have a bad split. Even in playoffs, it was bad. And, like, there are two ways about this, because I hear some people saying that, oh, he wasn't playing badly, he was just on weak side. And there is some truth to that, because he was playing weak side and he was playing utility. And he still had some good games. I think his Ashe game, was that in finals, was really good. His arrow hit rate was really good. He had an incredible Jhin game and an incredible Lucian game last series of regular season versus Anyone's Legend. That was just before, like, the Korean national team was announced. And I thought, okay, he's probably gunning for something there, because he was playing out of his mind on that series. So it's not like he's always had bad games. But then I also saw him Corky click on like a 200 HP Herald, which then teleports him into the middle of the team, and he immediately dies, almost throwing a one game. Like, he has had, and he's like misclicking on blast cones and having to flash away as well. There are some key crucial mistakes he's making, which you cannot afford to do that at MSI. But you're absolutely right. We've also seen, they are more occasional, but we have seen some of those games where he will just completely run the map. Then the question is, do they play around Viper? I don't think BLG should. I don't think they look good when they play around Viper. That's a stylistic thing. I think that's the reason why they play towards their top side so much. But yeah, there is absolutely logic to say, what happens if Viper from 25 just sends up best AD carrier in the world? Or any other number of years where he's been best in the world. That is the threat. Yeah, I agree.
What do you think, Yamato? On Viper, any angles?
Honestly, just on the topic of On and what has held against him so much, like the matchup against Keire, like I think Keire is the best support, probably the GOAT support. On though, I think people tend to forget that at MSI, On fathers Keire. There's been multiple occasions where this happens where they face them twice, beat them twice, and even
That happened, yeah.
23 it happened, in 24 as well. BLG just beat T1 twice, right? If I remember correctly. In the run up to the finals where Gen.G won. And it's like the context of this year as well, even though Keire has been absolutely amazing, is that the person who has made the meta is On. Right after first stand, everyone and their mother was trying to play Nivea support. Everyone and the mother was trying to play Camille support. He is the one who shapes the meta right now. And you can see clearly that Keire has a deep respect for that. Like, obviously, players at the highest level are going to look to what is currently the best team and get inspiration from that. And I think even it speaks to the topic of what you mentioned before, Nymaera, where people just talk about how LPL teams like to fight and they just brawl. It's like, yeah,
it does my head in.
Yeah, it's very, very annoying, because even looking at, like, I remember there was this YouTube comment like, LCK is so methodical. It's like, bro, you haven't even watched LCK. What are you talking about? It's like, right now, if you look at the 5 best teams that are coming into this tournament, I include G to the topic of the Eastern teams. All of them are really, really pushing the advantage on anything that looks like an opportunity. Everyone's looking for angles. Everyone is constantly trying to challenge the idea of fake pressuring, because if you don't, you're going to just lose too much ground. Right? Yeah. It's like for every AD that dies on your mid wave and looks stupid doing so, you need to look at how many waves he stole before he died to actually make an appropriate assessment if it made sense or not, because the best jungles and supports are going to leverage Fog of War as much as possible and make every decision difficult for you. And that's why we have such a high element of chaos, where every damn team that is mentioned in this top 5 has made massive throws in their run to be the best in their region. HLE in that game 1 against T1, that got really dirty. BLG has thrown games. G2 has thrown games. Toby Esports, I don't know how many times they, look insanely good, but then it's like, oh, they're pushing the 3rd tower a little bit too far, walk under the tower and lose 3 people. I think this can be said for all of the teams at this tournament, because I think that's just what you have to do, because the game is too snowbally. If you give up the Drake or 2 and you try to play like a Lion way of playing the game, it's not going to work for you. But back to the topic at hand, I think On and Keire are in a class of their own when it comes to supports. I think Delight can keep up if he has the right champions for him, but Keire and On, they are not bound by any meta. As you mentioned, it's like on range supports has been absolutely insane historically. On engage supports, even crazier. I think he has an amazing range. And that World Championship, when he definitely played very bad, because I think that he was the difference maker in the final against T1.
Didn't he miss every single rel Q in game 5?
It was like a Q flash that missed there at the Rift Herald situation in a series where everything was decided very early on, besides maybe game 4 when BLG played the Smolder Ziggs composition. Nevertheless, that tournament, every support outside of Keire looked terrible because that whole split, everyone was playing Warmog's armor support. And people remember how...
Dude, I remember that so cursed, yeah.
Everyone remembers how bad On played in the finals by his standard. I also remember how shit Lehens played. That was the MSI MVP. And he was single-handedly making the series so damn difficult against even FlyQuest. And even, I remember against T1 in that same World Championship, he just W'd with Maokai under the tower. I don't know what the hell was happening there. Every other support outside of Keire looked rough in that one. So I think that in terms of history, for those who know, there's a lot of things in history that actually support On's claim in terms of the head-to-head matchup against Keire and in terms of how valuable he can be. So I think he's definitely like the guy that can have a better series against Keire because it has happened.
By the way, I'll also tell you as well, this is just a bit of how behind the scenes works. I guarantee you the day after fucking some of those insane on Camille games, there's a million coaches around the world where their support player comes and goes, "Can I?" And they go, "No." Because it's like, you ain't. I always said to Keire, you ain't him, bro. Like, I'm sorry, they get special rules for them. They're allowed to do shit like that. You aren't allowed. If you're a normal player in a normal region, we're not even attempting that draft. That's not even on the table for you. They play a different game. You're just playing League of Legends, bro. All right, let's pivot, because actually, I do think one of the spiciest teams to talk about is T1, because I don't think you can rely on a lot of the old narratives. This looks like a much more streamlined T1. It looks like it is going to play through Pierce in the bot lane. They are going to hope that they have that strength. By the way, very interesting matchup, since actually, Viper's a bit weak coming in. Gumayusi traditionally will sometimes allow Zeus to be the sort of pressure point of the map. So thoughts on T1 as a potential winner here, Nymaera?
Okay, so solo laners laning phase is bad right now, and their drafts really worry me. Those are the two big takeaways I had about them. I think if they actually make it to late game, really good. And I think that even though the drafts, I think are poor, I think they were better than Gen.G's, but Gen.G's were some of the worst that I've seen out of like a top team. So that by comparison, sure, you can say that's a good thing, but I don't think you can as the overall takeaway from T1. I think what T1 are very good at doing is figuring out what tools they have in-game and then working it out as they go along. So there is a world where they fix their drafts and they have more tools to work with and they play very well. But that's going to be something which is a problem at MSI because it's a shortest tournament in the world. So, you're talking about it earlier, Thorin, about how T1 figure out patches very well, and if you give them enough time, they will flip a meta and they'll find something good about it. And I think that you can never write that off about T1. However, at MSI, typically that's not worked as well because they've not had as much time to play on as at Worlds. And they are starting in play, so they'll have a bit more stage experience. But I'm not sure if that window of time and playing against the lower tier opposition where the other teams are waiting, watching your tape, and then preparing for you as well, that might actually work against them in this sense. There's a lot of different moving parts from starting in play-ins. So yeah, I think that the solo laning has been quite off. I've seen they could be very varied on stuff like the Cassiopeia and the Lissandra, some good games, some bad ones, even when, because you played the Cassiopeia into Chovy's Galio, right? And I know Chovy's a very good laner, of course he is, right? But I would have thought that he should have gotten more out of that lane, despite the fact that I'm aware that the 2-item Galio on the current patch is kind of crazy with Imperial Mandate. I thought that was a pretty poor game from him. He was solo killed by Zeka as well, a bunch as well in the HLE series, or at least it was on the Ahri game, where Zeka's playing very well, sure, but I think Faker's individual laning phase has not. I don't think it's a level where you can win MSI playing like that, so he has to level up on that part. Doran, stuff like his Vayne really disappointed me, where he was playing the Vayne into the Ambessa versus that was versus Gen.G, I believe that was that game 1 or game 2? Anyway, one of the early games in that series where he made the same mistake that Keen was making when he was playing Vayne top in their lost games. Was that the first stand games they were losing actually on the Vayne? Where the Vayne player, and I'm a Vayne top player myself, again, you can crucify me when you want, but the Vayne top player in me says, you want to press Q to go forwards and do the damage, but if you don't hold it reactively, then you're still just a squishy AD carry. And he was doing things like queuing in while Ambessa and other CC was available, and he didn't have the Q to escape the Ambessa roll, and he was dying for that. And it's simple mistakes like this where I'm like, okay, technically those are simple mistakes, maybe they're gone, but it's really quite worrying that they were happening in such a high pressure, high importance best of 5 in the first place. So if that solo laning doesn't doesn't level up, I think T1 are going to get mashed if it remains standard laning meta and we don't have crazy lane swaps affecting the entirety of the game. And then, of course, Owners' earlier jungle invades just aren't working right now. I mean, we've talked about this in regards to HLE earlier and from their perspective, but Owner, I would agree with you, Thorin. I think he was the best jungler of the average of last year. It was either him or Kanavi or Tarzan. You choose one of those three, but Owner is a very valid pick amongst them. And if Owner suddenly can't get level 1 leads or get into the enemy jungle, even on stuff like Nocturne, where I'm a firm believer that Owner is the best Nocturne of all time, I don't think it's working very well for him now. If Owner's losing on Nocturne, something is going fucking wrong. Like, this guy's so good at that champion, but he's not reading the early game very well. So you already have these early game issues because the laning and the early game plans aren't where I'd want them to be as someone watching T1, and I know they can do better than that because I see how damn good they are at team fighting with the tools which they have, and I just thought if they fix their early game and their laning, then yeah, they're going to be a really formidable threat. I'm just not sure how quickly they can fix all of this and get to that point where they just out team fight opponents because they're better at using their tools. So that's like my large overheads, I suppose, and plus the fact Pays is on incredible form. I mean, I'm talking about the negatives of T1. Let's not forget, actually, they're very good team fighters anyway, and they team fight very, very well around Pays, who's playing a lot of hyper carries. You can bring out stuff like the FLS and just do mad stuff with that. So T1, I think they're formidable, but they have a lot of work to do before they get onto a level where I think they really contest for the title.
Yamato, does T1 win MSI?
Oh, I doubt it. It's like I believe, I never believe in magic, but when it's reoccurring that at a scale so often, I do think it's something that you need to consider, especially with Owner's potential form. It has been very up and down, but internationally has a track record of just succeeding, right? And I think if T1 is to win, it has to be through just Keire and Owner being clearly the best in their position, and the style of T1 being through bot lane being the superior one to everyone else's style, which is through mid lane and through jungle. And if that happens, which has happened at some World Championships, where they manage to kind of shape the tournament meta to them, then I can see them winning. Otherwise, it looks very, very hard because you have two teams that look very, very good at what the game currently is. And reshaping the game is a very, very difficult task. And I do think that MSI has always been a very difficult tournament for T1 because the changes, even though there's some two big patches in terms of champions that might change, MSI is usually just a big test for potential skill ceiling without the added element of how good do you deal with logistics? How good do you deal with bad practice? How good do you deal with all the bullshit and still perform and just clutch it up? I don't think MSI is that tournament. It's just a test of skill because these teams have 1 month time to prepare. And I do think that even if changes happen, these teams are ready for those changes. So I think the T1's biggest strengths don't get leveraged the same. But can't count them out completely due to what I mentioned before.
Okay, I saved this segment for this specific part of the show where we had Nymaera here as well.
Feels so special.
Because on the other episodes, as segments rather, if you notice, you can tell if people don't watch the LPL or they're only going on historical trends, they don't want to have this conversation. So here's how I'm going to frame it. We're not on a mountain, gentlemen. The mountain was talking about HLE, BLG, can T1 reach... No, now we're down in Kakariko Village because as much as you might like it, it's a very pleasant place. Who doesn't enjoy visiting Kakariko Village? The problem is Kakariko Village is only a pit stop on the way to where you're going. It's never the final destination. So here's the problem historically, Nymaera. TES historically is just Kakariko Village. I love me some Kakariko Village, but I tell you what, it's never where Ganondorf's going to be, is it? It's never where Zelda's going to live in a pretty castle. So is this the time? No one else even invoked this name. Top Esports is at MSI. They are here. Is this the time they actually do something?
First off, how many times did you have on your bingo sheet to say Kakariko Village? Because that was like... Listen. Okay, Top Esports. I'm firmly in a I'll believe it when I see it mode. It has to be. They and even this year, maybe even more so because they're bringing two first-time international players. Top Esports, I can tell you how they perform domestically. I just cannot, with good faith, say they'll do that internationally. Now, I see a lot of, rejoicing from EU fans because, wow, Top Esports are making international again. And some despair from LPL fans who are not Top Esports, and even some Top Esports fans, to be honest. But you can't deny that Top Esports deserve to qualify every time they do. They went through JDG, they destroyed WE, it was not close. And yeah, they were blasted in finals. That's just the case against BLG sometimes. Even if you're a very good team, BLG will sometimes just mash you, and there's not much you can do about that. So I guess I'll talk about some of the new players and where the needle has potentially moved for this team from the last time we saw them internationally, because of course they're coming from the last time we saw them internationally was Worlds last year, where they demolished G2. They absolutely demolished them. It wasn't close. So they've changed out top lane and they've changed out support. Their journey to this point's been quite different. Well, actually, technically from Worlds last year, they had Cubby last year as well, so they changed that too. So they only have mid AD carry remaining from 2025. A bit hard to track the trajectory of all these teams, actually, because so many changes happened. And of course, Top Esports, since then, went on to actually have a pretty good first split, and then things fell apart in several 5-game series in playoffs. And then there were match fixing, not even just allegations, but like confirmed things against Nio, their jungler. And the team kind of fell apart from that. Of course, at that point, they had Jachi as their AD carry, so it was a different AD carry. Jakilov came back after a split break because he was resting. So he has tinnitus, which is really, really bad, to the point where if you're just practicing with headphones on every day. I mean, I have low-level tinnitus myself from going to too many too loud rock gigs. But if it's as bad as he has, like, I struggle with it enough myself. If you're a pro player having headphones on all the time, fucking killer. I actually don't blame him taking that off for medical reasons at all. So it's been a pretty winding path from Worlds, where of course they bombed out versus T1, but they destroyed G2. So that's our benchmark. Better than the Western teams, worse than the competitors for the title. To then kind of going through this whole roster change, because of course, even at the start of this split, the last kind of bit of drama was, I believe in one of the EWC online qualifiers, 369 got humiliated by Flandre against AL, and then 369 was like, I'm taking a step back, I'm done, pretty much. And then they had to bring in Top Esports Challengers player who had played in the LPL previously, briefly in 2024, Swian. He played on Invictus Gaming. So technically he's not a rookie. If you're an LPL viewer, you will have known him back there, but it's easier to call him a rookie, but I think it is more correct and a better storyline to say Swian played on Invictus Gaming, summer 2024, was shit. He played a lot of Skarner top and Cassante, and he's had to claw his way back up through LDL to get, this miracle chance to get back onto actually a top team now. Get onto a top team. No one would expect him to get. I wouldn't have thought I'd see him on the LPL again. He was that bad in 2024, but he's gone back into the oven. He's come back out a much more complete product. And he came back in this split as not the tank top lane player. He was counterpicking Bin and beating Bin. He was playing Vayne into Gnar, and Bin played admirably for the first few minutes, and then things fell apart when he got solo killed a couple of times, and then Swian carried through Bin. In the LPL just after first stand as well. And I know there's some fatigue or whatever coming off internationally. That's a hell of a way to make a debut. And for the first half of the split, he was basically giving counterpick, a load of carries, and he was doing some mad stuff to other top laners. Pretty much everyone was losing to his counterpick. Second half of the split wasn't getting as many counterpicks because people were choosing choosing counterpick against them. Actually, at that point later into series, he was struggling a lot more. And he looked a lot more pedestrian. He's managed to even that out a little bit. And then, of course, finals was really, really bad for him versus Bin, where he picked an Olaf counterpick, trying to counterpick him in the way that he started the split. And he lost against a Sion as Olaf. Bad news. So you can see there's a journey even for Swian as a top laner too. He's been through the ringer in terms of his career, but even this split, started high, dipped down, come back to a more average level. First time international debut, though, it's going to be pretty hard to expect anything out of him MSI-wise. I mean, if he does get comfortable counterpicks and gets to play them out, great. I hope he gets to play with that confidence. Of course, this person is actually a true rookie, though, in Fungyue. Their support coming into joining the spot lane. He laned with Jachi earlier in the year, and then he's now laning with Jakilov. Fungyue actually has clocked in every single series for a good day of work. I think Fungyue is the one person on this team, maybe alongside Jakilov, where I'd sat there and go, yeah, you know what? You actually haven't had a quote-unquote bad series. You've had like more mediocre ones, but I can see he's locking in pretty much every game. He'll make mistakes, but he's always making aggressive plays. He's a great laner as well. His Seraphine's great. His Nautilus is good too. He's got a good breadth of champions. His enchanters are a little worse than his engage by my mind, but then again, you're playing enchanter with Jakilov, so that kind of covers that weakness. So these are the two new members. And I think that Fungyue is a really important part of their engage. Swian is a really big part of how they deal with enemy top laners, of course, and actually gives them a win condition through top lane. And I think if the going is good, they'll be good at peak. And if they play at domestic form, they'll be able to like contest for top 4, you know, and I would expect them to be doing well against any non-LCK LPL team and being a threat. Of course, the needle might have moved on G2. We'll see. Skewmonder's looking incredible right now. Maybe that changes the G2 top esports matchup itself. But my worry is if top esports take an early hit, does the mental shatter again, and does having 2 new rookies put extra burden on the team to make it easier to shatter mentally, and then harder to come back from it when that happens? That's my worry. Now, Funguay is actually a very mature bloke. If you watch a lot of his interviews, which have been translated on Twitter, it's a part of the LPL Twitter community does a lot of those translated interviews, and they're very good things to see. You know, I think he's a very mature guy. I think he's got a very level head on. But if the vibes go down on top of esports internationally, having 2 rookies with you arguably makes that worse, right? So sadly for top esports, I think that they are a great team fighting team. I think they've got some very versatile players. I think that Tien, Cream, and Jackulov have all been on great form. Cream, arguably best split ever. Might need Yamato to check me on
especially
that one,
in terms of like champion pool and growth. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I think that Cream. I mean, look, the second half of his split was weaker than his first, but I think that Cream, I would say best split ever. Definitely the most varied. He's playing his melees and his mages now. He's been carrying team fights. He is really good. Obviously, distant second to someone like Knight and contested with.
I'll even throw this out there. He's only 22 now. I know it feels like he's been around a million. Yeah. He could still, for all we know, this could be a legit like progression and opening up another part of his game. Yeah,
I hope so, because I think the LPL mid lane pool has taken a hit over the last few years. Doomby's retired, rookie stepping back and forwards, been on shit teams, so he's not contesting as well. Xiaohu's actually all right, but I don't think he's like mega anymore. Doomby retired, as we said. Scout's gone. Yeah, and even Shanks this year is
there's
not
no Yagao.
Even Yagao was in there. Yeah. If Yagao was there in last year's meta, and that, I actually think Yagao, if he'd stuck it out for a couple more years, would actually be doing really well right now, which is a real shame to say, actually. So yeah, I mean, top esports on the whole, domestically they're good. They deserve to be second seed. It's only BLG which absolutely monstered them, but you know, Tien mastered the early jungle invade meta. Jackulov's actually been much less variable. He's actually been more consistent this time, but again, we said that before. First hand last year didn't help him at all there.
That's also only played a split as well.
Only played the one split as well. And, you know, I think that the new players they have coming in, and, you know, Swian, who's climbed up from LDL after a brief debut, and then Funguay as a rookie, like, top esports are a good team if they perform the way they do domestically. You know, I love their team fighting drafts. I like what Tien's very versatile too. If Kiana is back in meta, fuck yeah, Tien Kiana, one of the best in the world. Him versus Kanavi is going to be great at that. But I can't in good conscience tell you anything but, you know, a crash out is going to happen until I see it. Top esports are just not reliable when the mental strain comes through. It's just the nature of the team.
Would you care to venture a guess about top esports, Yamato?
Yeah, with pleasure. How
much of a razor cake?
You know, in my mind, I think that you know, the contrast to the differences is that I do think that top esports with Kanavi made them very one-dimensional, and I think that's out of the way. And with Cream, and I think your mid lane pool is always going to be the thing that decides how much of a range you have in terms of making fitting mid jungle duos that make sense. I do think that Cream and how they've approached, like especially how they beat JDG, they had such a good range of play there that was very impressive. I think that Tian is the type of jungler that you can't break. I think that he's insanely smart about how he paths, and you could see that in their series against WE, where any of the dangers that were thrown his way was something that they could manage and deal with, which I think is a massive plus. My biggest concern for top esports is just in contrast to past years, I'm just worried the fact that they have 2 international rookies coming through. I think that MSI as a tournament, if you look at the competition, is just that all of these guys have played so many internationals. They have dealt with the pressures, the differences of practice, and all these details that are different from playing from your office. And I think that challenge is hard to overtake because you have a lot more room to do so at a world championship. I don't remember when someone has debuted internationally at MSI besides maybe Pays and have like an incredible tournament. It's just so rare because the usual suspects always show up. Yeah. And I think that with time, these guys are going to be good because I think Top Esports is a legit team. But the only detail that is kind of that this Top Esports, the only detail that is haunted by the past in my mind is Jackulov. And I remember someone told me, like an LPL insider said, because I mentioned this, was like Jackie Love is doing bad internationally, and apparently it's tied to the fact that he can't fly and takes trains, and his travel is all rough because he just for health reasons couldn't fly. I don't know.
It might be an inner ear thing if it's tinnitus. I'm guessing that. Yeah, if it is stuff.
So it's like the fact that he doesn't fly, has to take a train out, and has to travel for like 3 days to reach his location, has to like venture through, I don't know, the Alps.
The joke's up himself. The reason why he can't fly, because he can't sit still for any amount of time, can he? He's probably trying to move all the time and dodge under the seat and go around the fucking waitress or whatever. So it's like, you know what, sir, we're going to have to deboard you at this point in time. He has to run there. He just runs the whole way to MSI.
I think of that scene in Wolf of Wall Street, where they had to tie them down.
Yeah, exactly.
Dude, I only watched that movie the first time last month. I'd somehow skipped that like my entire life.
Okay. What did you think?
It's good. It's good. Good movie.
It's
different to what the internet tells you about it, I guess. People just like it for the memes.
Do you know what? One thing I hate when people comment on me in League of Legends is people act like all I do is this like weird pop culture references. I'm just doing like anecdotal things. I'm using like really weird like archetypal elements. I'm not analyzing the game, but that's not true. So let's get deep with this. I'm going to go against all you guys. Here's why it's actually going to work, right? Because you know how when Wile Coyote is chasing the Roadrunner, sometimes Wile Coyote will be running after him, and he'll go right off the edge of a cliff, but he doesn't fall until he eventually realizes he's running across the earth, and he looks down, and suddenly both the gravity of his world and the situation hits him, and that's when he falls. Here's what's going to happen. Feng Wei and Zuian don't even know yet that they're going to be running on air. They're just going to go into the tournament like, I play League of Legends. It's League of Legends. He puts his trousers on just like I do. They're going to start going on, Jackie Love will be like, hey guys, watch out because the Grins like, shut up, honk. We're the fucking Zoomer generation. We don't listen to you, boomer. What are you doing? Still using a phone or something? So anyway, they're going to go out, and then they're just going to, out of the gate, because they're going to get to play fucking straight in the main event. Remember, they don't have to show anything in the plane. They're just going to already be waiting in the main event. They're just going to right out the gate, couple of series, bish bash bosh. Tiana, Jackie Love are ready for the revenge. They want to see G2, mate. They want to fucking get revenge on these guys. So no, it's going to work this time. You know what? I believe I will be the only one in the world who says top esports will make it. Now look, when they finally do realize, upper bracket final probably then they're going to be fucked at that point. As soon as they actually realize what it's like when you play against the best players in the world, it's over. But you know what? Until then, it's going to work.
It's like
that's a deep analysis for you.
Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. The way that you discover how to fly is when you fall over and forget to hit the ground.
There you go.
Exactly. There you go. It's exactly the same thing. I mean, do you want to? We got time to talk about G2? Because I think that's
let's do it.
To check in there.
By the way, the obvious best way to do G2 is I imagine. Do they have a chance to do anything against these big dogs? Can they do it?
I have some worries, but yes, I think a lot of it depends on enabling Skewmond. Because if you look at the difference in the games that they were winning and losing in finals and just in general over this split, it felt like they had to do a rediscovery arc on what Skewmond was most impactful on and what wasn't working for him. So, for instance, they tried out his Lee Sin. And apparently, like, he was saying, I can play Lee Sin for like weeks and weeks and weeks. They finally let him play it. And it's like, okay, we're benching the Lee Sin again. So, like, he was really trying to play it, but it didn't work out. And for instance, his Nocturne is not very good. And that's a very important champion right now. I have some champion pool concerns about the meta right now. However, if you simplify Skewmond's job and just say, okay, this is the way that you play out the early game. This is the way you get into a team fight. Skewmond, much like First Stand, could just peak as one of the very best players in the world, which is insanity, by the way, from EU. Like, one, he's not getting outshined on a team with caps. Very, very rare that if you're on a team with caps, you are considered, the more important or better player in some cases, and I actually would with Skewmond at this point. And very rare that you actually peak as a Western player as perhaps best in role, perhaps one of the top players in the world. Very few players have done that ever in Europe. You have to go back to 2012 when it was more common with your Moscow 5 and your CLGU and the likes. But you go to 2019, that's the last kind of era where I think that was more common outside of a freak-inspired Yankos. Skewmond is amongst that kind of freak list where maybe he picks up another champion like the Nasus. And actually, Nasus is completely different to the way that everyone else is playing jungle right now. And maybe, Kanavi doesn't get the lead over him in jungle and he gets to farm up to 400 stacks. And then suddenly he kills everyone. If he has another couple of champions like that, much like, we saw that with the Mundo last Worlds. If they have another champion like that and they have the Mundo and the Nasus, another champion like that, I can see G2 being a real silver bullet to some teams which don't grasp the meta firmly and don't get that jungle lead. Now, there's a lot of moving parts. BB needs to survive against some of these top laners too. He's actually been playing on pretty good form recently, and I think his Shen was really good too. Of course, Caps bit up and down in form as well over the split too, but if he turns up, then that's another big point for them as well. Quite worried about bot lane laning phase against some of these duos. I think it'll be fine against the lower tier teams, but if you go up against, like I said, if Viper and On, we do say they're playing weak side, but they're still Viper and On, right? So yeah, I think G2, I can see a world in which the meta rolls well for them. They have to prep so well, though. I need them to have like a couple of different game-changing junglers, because so much of the year this season has been, how do you approach your early jungle clear, your level 1 support and invade, or allow you to invade later into the clear because you have good information on the jungle, you get ahead by half a level, you start forcing fights through jungle, you win the game. That has been so much of the game, and Skewmon was so good at that first stand. So good at that. If they can either optimize that style again, or just flip the meta entirely around jungle again, I think they do have the ability to silver bullet this tournament with just some random jungle picks with Skewmon only plays.
Yamato, what's the G2 result going to be? What we getting?
I think they are fortunate that the Tobisos matchup happens early, because I think the big thing that G2 will have
round, right?
Yeah, first game, unless T1 bomb out somehow.
I actually just forgot about that. Yeah, that's
an LCP team makes it or something, because even if KC make it,
well, you mean Karmine Corp, right? Yeah, they're making it through. Yeah.
No, but if KC make it, top esports still play against G2, because they can't face each other because of EU.
Oh yeah, true. Damn.
There needs to be a deep cut for that not to happen. Either way, I think that G2's biggest advantage at first stand was their strategic edge over BFX, over Gen.G. They were stuck in a meta that was about hyper carry bot laners, and they tried to adjust, and they were far too slow. And I think that made them better. And I think coming into this tournament, I have so high trust in G2's coaching staff to figure out new patches and outliers. Because in similar fashion, they were the first to play Senna after the changes. They were also the ones to play Smolder with the Deathfire Torch changes. They are very, very aware of trends, and they are bold enough to take chances. And I think strategically, if they're going to beat anybody, it is because they have like insane draft angles that give them edges in the game. I think I have trust in their coaching staff to find these angles, but the fact that it's double elimination, it makes me think that there will be a ceiling for how far they can reach, but can they upset one of the big dogs? Maybe. But I think that's one of those trains that stops earlier rather than later.
Just to cut in there, which of the top teams do you think actually drafts well? Because I think that's key to this conversation. Because I think G2 could be, I could see a world where they're the best drafting team of the tournament. Because I don't think many top teams draft well right now.
I would agree. Yeah, I think G2 has the cleanest approach to draft, and they pay attention to the right details in terms of how they balance things out for scaling against their mid jungle support combinations and also their bot lane combinations. I do think that BOG, I think also are up there, but I take that only from the context of like their finals and first stand, because outside of that, if you look at the games leading up to that, where, like, for example, let's say the series against BFX, there was many moments I'm like, what the hell? What are we doing? We're going to be 5 games with BFX? Like, what is this game? Like, what are we doing this here? And I felt the same way throughout the playoffs also for the lead up to, of course, the finals. But it's just one of those things where I'm speculating purely, but I do feel like BUG, they really match their prep to how they judge the situation and their opponent.
Yeah, I think that BLG do really well at just saying, like old SKT used to do, where it's like, fake it, you have R5, pick something. It kind of feels like that with Knight right now, where they just give Knight a really good look at the draft and say, what have you got that wins the draft? And he typically has something.
I have this weird feeling that we're going to have Danny's Poppy obsession. He's just going to like pick Poppy game 1, no matter what, like blindly.
In fairness, Shun and On are both really good at that chat.
They're really good at it. Yeah. I just remember the Weibo days where like that game 1 against Fnatic when it went to 3, the best of 3 that would qualify them to playoffs.
Which jungle was that? Was that Weiwei in jungle at that? No, he was on LNG at that point. Which jungle was that? Was that Wei? I'm trying to remember. They've been through so many different jungles over that time. Anyway, right.
I think it might have been way. It might have been way because this was the run up to the finals, right? That year. But yeah, I'm going too far down the memory lane. Just G2, just G2. I think the timing to beat top esports is definitely at the beginning. I think if they make it far, it's going to be through strategic angles. I really believe in Scumond as a player a lot, but I think there is. I have this general feeling that I think he was much sharper in Winter Split than he was in Spring, which might sound crazy. I think he had higher highs in Spring, but he also had some lows in terms of his individual consistency, because I never saw him play bad, in Winter. While he had a couple of games, it was like, oh, well, okay, it's fine. You're going to win the series anyway. That's fine. And I think coming into this tournament, even though I have high faith in Scumond, I just think the jungle pool is so damn competitive. Really, really competitive. Just looking at the top guys like Owner, Kanavi, and Shun. And even in the context of first stand, when Shun finally played against Scumond, Shun was way better than him. Plain and simple. And I think that even though I want to get bought into the hype of Scumond, having those international performances before I believe that that's something he's going to be able to replicate, right? I need to see it more often, because then again, we look at Gen.G, we look at Canyon, even though Canyon probably still the jungle GOAT, we still looked at him as someone that has been heavily underperforming on the team. And Raptor is like, he was good in the playoffs for the LCK, but had a very rough time at, of course, first stand. So I don't want to go down that line of thinking first stand is something that they will be able to replicate, because the circumstances are so different. The jungle opposition is so
too, with like Neferi, Kiana being so popular too. Maybe that changes things.
Yeah. I like Scumond. I think he's going to be a legendary player, and he's going to be a part of Europe's legacy for the next 5 years easily. But this is a whole different test than first stand, and I think it's going to be tough for G2 to keep up, because I do think that HLE, BOG specifically, do what G2 do, but better.
Here's the thing. I do think that Scumond is a genius generational player, but the problem is, like you just said, you nailed it at the end there, Yamato. Look at the two players he played that with the Korean junglers, though. And by the way, I'm sorry, that was probably the best Scumond's ever played. Jun just actually fucking handled him, mate. Like, I know he has better teammates, but at the same time, so my problem here is you've got the wrong jungle pool. Even Tian, by the way, could cause problems. Like, this guy's a fucking brilliant player who's played against the best junglers to ever play League of Legends and adapted and beaten them and found angles. Also, on the whole, like, they draft well. It's all well and good drafting against LEC teams. We just said it earlier. What happens when fucking On just goes, draft, lol, I pick whatever the fuck I want? Like, go look up my Game of Legends, mate. It's ridiculous. Like, this guy's a million pocket picks. It's insane, isn't it? So, I don't know. Yeah, I think this is the one where G2 unfortunately doesn't do it right. Last topic is just what do you think of the potential of KC? Obviously, the problem here is you have to get past T1 to get into the tournament, but is there even a chance to do something here, Nymaera?
The bot lane's really good. They play a little too slow for my liking. That's the problem. I don't think they'll have issues against the other teams in the group in plans. I think that the problem which I've seen from DC, because I know you had Vestion on before. I was VOD reviewing some LCP with Vestion and Carix just yesterday actually, and like my main takeaway was, oh my god, the LCP bot lanes are just going to get eaten. They're just not performing well. So I think Casey
we now know that Nymaera does literally just eat, sleep, and breathe League of Legends. So he's having 3-hour conversations with Dagda. Then he's like, sorry, Dagda, I've just got to go and have a conversation. Got to talk to Vestion about a VOD review with him and Carrie. Like,
it makes it a lot easier when they're just friends. It makes it a lot easier when it's that, because when I went to uni, I basically just went to my gaming society and chatted League of Legends, and then somehow I put a microphone in front of it. It's basically just what I've done for like the last, how long now? 10 years? Well, more than that now. God, I'm turning 30 on Sunday. I've done this for like 12 years of my life. Most of my adult life at this point. So yeah, it makes it a lot easier when it's just part of your regular social life. I've got my brother on a chat with him next door, British League all the time. And is it unhealthy to a point? Yeah, I don't go outside much, but hey, it does make actually keeping up with the world of League of Legends. Wow, important thing in my life. Pretty okay with that. Right, KC, yeah, bot lane's looking pretty good against the field, say against, DCG's bot lane. Not looking too hot there from DCG. I think that Canna, as long as he turns up on non-finals form, is that fair to say? I mean, he wasn't that great in finals, I suppose. Canna occasionally has like a random dip, but if he plays like the Canna that we know, I mean, I like the top sides of like LCP, for instance, but I don't think I don't think they'll be beating Canna. Team Liquid, Morgan. I mean, I haven't watched nearly as much LCS to like have anything more than like surface level takes. I mean, the top side of Team Liquid's fine. I think that in some ways, I just feel like KC will just out team fight Liquid at some point in the game, and I don't think that Liquid will be winning games unless Hosa Diodo just absolutely stomps early game and gets like a Lee Sin and snowballs to high Hal. So I think on the whole, KC should be favored against them, although, stranger things have happened. So then the question does come down to, I think KC will be better than the other two teams in play-ins, but then against T1, you have to hope that T1 just self-destructs or have a bad meta read, and their early game is still bad. If T1 has bad early game read again, and they don't get owner off to a good start, and all of these other issues that we've been seeing, then we have a situation where KC can play the slower game, and then we get to see what happens in team fights. Kalista is really good. Pays is on some incredible form, though, and obviously AD carry-centric team fights tends to be the way of the meta right now. I think it's a good fist fight, but I don't know if I can bet against T1 winning team fights, because KC, sadly, are just not the team that will shut out a game very early, I don't think, in a way that you would like to against T1 if their early game is their weakness right now. But at least I think if we do see, KC T1 for, either, the round 2 match or even the qualification match, we'll see how many times we get to see it. But I think that it should get to team fights at least, and that's where it becomes a real firework fest.
Who wins MSI?
BLG.
And who was the MVP?
Knight. I'm giving you the bog standard answers, but if you're an LPL knower, you're an LPL knower.
Right, that'll be the end of this segment.
Nice
we'll be
me.
back after the break with Keire, so we will see you in a minute.
It's simply not just your hair that takes a hit. It can change how you feel day in, day out, and Hims makes it simple to take control of hair regrowth with personalized care that fits your life. No awkward doctor visits. You have to make the phone call and then you have to wait a couple of months. The line is crazy. You go over there to the doctor's office. You're in a waiting room that they take you to a different waiting room. And then when you finally see the doctor, he says, please wait. I got to go do something. And then this disappears for 20 minutes. And then he comes back to tell you some random stuff. Sometimes they care about you. Sometimes they don't. You get to skip all of that because Hims is convenient access to a range of course, prescription hair loss treatments with ingredients that work, including chews, oral medication, serums, and sprays, and all of it happens online. You just write in a little form, and then you get, of course, your prescription, easy peasy, very lemon squeezy. You just got to do all of that from home. Find the right hair regrowth treatment for you with flexible subscription options, access to 24/7 provider support, and a once-a-day treatment option that fits, of course, your daily routine. Maybe in this moment, in this heat wave, is nice when the wind hits the scalp of your head. But let me tell you, keeping your hair is going to do you wonders. So with that being said, for simple online access to personalized and affordable care for hair loss, ED, weight loss, and more, visit hims.com/LFN. That's hims.com/LFN for your free online visit, hims.com/LFN. Featured products include compounded drug products which the FDA does not approve or verify for safety, effectiveness, or quality. Prescription required. See website for full details, restrictions, and important safety information. Individual results may vary based on studies of topical and oral minoxidil and finasteride. Thank you, Hims.
Also, here's the thing, guys. Maybe today you have hair, maybe it's no problem, but who knows what will come tomorrow. So all I'm saying is this. Some people would say hair today, gone tomorrow. I say, why not hair today and tomorrow? There you go, Hims. You can still, like, if you hit me up, that could be a new slogan. That's a pretty good campaign, isn't it? Like, by the way, I noticed about 90% of my material would work in like a pantomime or some sort of children's entertainment TV show. So enough said. Right, Keire, you do realise, essentially, this is why I made that show for you, Hot Take Point Made League of Legends Edition, because essentially every show you're on is Hot Take Point Made League of Legends Edition, just other people don't know that. So, we're not bringing you here for level-headed, calm, cool analysis. We're coming here to, fucking put every take on steroids and fucking ramp it up to the max. So I want to start with one, which is, first of all, Keire this season did have one of the craziest calls of all. He actually did the hot tick before the LEC playoffs begin that Vitality would lose both series and be eliminated without winning one. He actually did call that before. So he hasn't been wrong every time. So I want to start on the other end of the equation. Right, Keire, are you mad enough to give me any kind of hope for TES? What should I think? No, even Keire won't go that
I
far.
can't. I
Right.
can't reach into the abyss. Like, would you call it? I
Okay.
would like.
Okay.
I would like to keep all my limbs attached. You know what I mean?
Okay.
And there's just certain things, certain forces shouldn't be tampered with. And TES at international events is one of them. I've had, like, if Kelsey Moser taught me well, and to be disappointed in TES was one of our primary teachings.
Right.
At all times, you
Okay.
expect them. They will do nothing that they do domestically,
All right, sure,
internationally.
sure. Yeah.
Even if you change all of the players, the
Right,
curse will
okay.
follow
Just
them.
the cursed orc, right, okay.
Put it this way, the curse was strong enough to follow Rookie, right? Into the team,
Okay,
right? That's
okay.
how potent
True,
this
yeah.
fucking... This is like a level of witchcraftery that they're going to need some sort of like dispelling, some fucking anti-curse, like... I don't know what this team does. Like, their star players are all just like, you know, it's Jakulov. He's like the most popular player in all of China. He's not won anything, and I think he won the one fake split.
split.
Not fake,
Yeah, he
won
won one
the
split,
split. So he did get something in the bag, but it was like almost like a 7-year drought or something. Like, no, it was a 6-year or 5-year drought, which is just crazy of a player of that like caliber. Yes, like the org is just kind of cursed. They've always been plagued with coaching like problems. I wonder who like the fucking like decision maker is at like TES, like who is like the Chinese big boss who's like, you know, moving things about and doing all that type of stuff. Because, you know what I mean, I know some of them in China. I actually don't know TES's because he must be really bad at his job because he like
At this point, whoever that person is, I need them to almost be like, we need like a fucking mole hunt to find out if they're secretly Korean in somewhere. Like, oh, this is the greatest double agent job of all time. Like, you just fucking, what are you doing? Mission 1, qualified to all international competitions. Mission 2, lose to Korea.
Yeah, like,
he's probably secretly T1 fucking employee or something. I know, it's nuts.
And like the thing is I think TES has been basically an element to show how bad the decline of the LPL, because their ability to just like have Tian and Jakulov on their team, and then Cream as well, right, and then just be second place like all the time, I think kind of suggests the degrading quality of like the LPL in general. I think since like 2023 there has been a general decline, even if the top team might be slightly better, like their actual number 1 team. They've begun to take on vestiges of EU in that sense, where the number 1 team is becoming such an outlier compared to the rest of the region. But you are in China, you do need to stack talent to an insane level, because the number 1 Chinese team is expected to be as good as the LCK team, but you've got to fill it with Chinese players who on the aggregate tend to be slightly worse than their counterparts. So it kind of makes sense.
All right, what about this then? So let's just do the LEC part first before we get to the big Asian teams, right? Are you a believer? Because I feel like on G2, sometimes you criticize Broken Blade. Maybe you're not always big as Handsome fan. Does G2 do a first stand desk run? Is that in their locker, do you think?
So I think a narrative point that a lot of people haven't really grabbed onto is G2 generally are a very good drafting team, but not when patches change. When new patches come out, G2 have historically had like a lot of problems like adapting to patches. We've seen this last year with like BB was just randomly worse than Brazilian top laners. And like G2's like drafting priorities. Hansama, like, it's not that he's like an outright like international like choker. It's that he's got kind of got that Chovy thing where he didn't always like choke, but he like goes from being like elite to just like kind of like an okay level, where he's not just outright losing you the game, but he's hardly the Hansama that like you kind of like bargained for to be taken to international events. You know what I mean? There are versions of Hansama that are like beating Jakulov and Mako in Litten, and then there's versions of Jakulov who are dying as Ezreal like in midsection and like fail flashing to go over walls and stuff. So it can be pretty painful. I do believe in them in the sense of like, I think there's a surprising number of teams that they could probably beat. I actually think one of their better matchups is HLE if they end up playing. I actually think HLE is like a quite good, like on the aggregate, like I don't think they're like win percentage is positive versus HLE. I just don't think it's as negative as it would be against like T1, BLG, etc. Like I think of all the good teams at the tournament, I think their best chance of beating anyone's HLE. By a margin, it's not inconsiderable. I would say maybe 40-60 G2 could win it.
Okay, that's quite bold.
Yeah.
You don't think Kanavi just plows them?
No, I don't think Kanavi. The problem is the jungle pool right now isn't like Kanavi does like to do his invades. G2 is like one of the better teams at like hiding and protecting the invasions, even when Skumon's on those jungle picks that he isn't as comfortable with. Like the Yike, who's someone who's probably one of the only players right now who like can quite consistently in individual games matches up into like Skumond or like attempts to strategize against them. You've seen it with like, oh, I'm going to go into this Aatrox, I'm going to be trying to be this sustain frontline fighter, and you know they have the Nasus sitting in the back pocket. And there's lots. I think Skumond could have, you know, a good couple of picks that a lot of the LPL and LCK teams deeper into drafts, because everything's BO5 straight away, isn't it? Like, I'm not mistaken by that. It is BO5 straight away. So I think every game that G2 wins that gets them deeper into draft, their chances of winning go up. So if like HLE or any other teams like want to just like have the best time possible, is to just 3-0 them. But every time you drop a game, if it goes to like 4 games, 5 games, I actually think G2's win percentage increases quite drastically. Because they will play these very sharp counters. Not so much counters, but these very sharp picks that I think a lot of the LCK and the LPL, well, I'm saying a lot of the LCK, I think a lot of the Korean teams and LPL teams won't really respect. I think Skumon could quite consistently pilot them to victories. And I also think Labrov has this is going to sound so fucking weird, but he has a good champion pool specifically into Delight, because he can take away a lot of Delight's power picks away from him and be comfortable on those picks himself. So as in, like, you're not like hurting, you're not just sticking your support player. Like, it's the same as On, Delight are probably the 2 best Alistar players like in the world. They're like incredible on Alistar. So you then have to start thinking about where do you like prioritize Alistar in the face of like the meta and stuff like that. And the fact that On can take it away at a relatively similar level to Delight matters. And I think Labrov has like an edge to that. And I don't think like Zeka, whatever the fuck you want to call him, I don't care. I don't think he's like at that level where he'll just blow out Caps enough like games. Like, I do appreciate the fact that I think he's better than Caps. The only big one is like BB into oh Jesus Christ, I'm blanking on his name. Top laner, Zay for HLE. That is like the only consideration. Like, I think that is like a little bit scary. But beyond that, I don't think it's like that crazy. I think people just kind of see the Hall of Fame names. And I'm not even basing this, by the way, on the fact of like G2 beat fucking Gen.G and BFX. They're now the Korean Slayers. Like, I don't give a fuck. Like, G2 could have fucking beaten T1 yesterday, or like they could have lost to T1 yesterday. I think it's more of an intricate matchup. I actually think T1 would butcher them, to be honest. I think it would be like the fucking Attila the Hun, like destroying the Roman Empire level stuff. But whatever.
Yamato, what are the chances for KC?
Ooh, for KC, I think the KC matchup into T1 is tough because the strengths are too similar. I think that when it comes to Busio and Kalis, they're very strong laners, but that's how I describe Paze and Keire on what I would consider just a different tier. And I don't think that is going to be the advantage, because I think the main reason why the KC G2 series are close is because, yeah, Hansama and Labrov are getting outlaned. Like, there was a Jin game where they got 2v2 killed. It just happens, and it's quite a consistent advantage that they build. And I don't think there's going to be a thing that they can lean on. And we meme on Doran, but we meme on Doran when he plays against demons. And I think that if you are a player like Doran and you've gotten used to playing against, for example, Zeus, I don't think Kana can enact that same level of pressure on you to break you. Because Doran, in the end, is a player that is very good at absorbing the punch. As long as he's not picking Vayne, you know, and like thinking that he's more than he is, I think he should be fine. And I think the main thing is if KC can really lean into the new identity they found in the last 2 best of 5s, where they played heavily through mid lane, I do think that's where T1 has a little bit of exposure, because I do think that Faker tends to play a very lonely game, and he finds ways to be effective, but he is under threat when it comes to the early game through his weaker lane, and also the fact that jungle and support rarely cross or come by mid lane because they're busy pressuring through bottom side and making sure that they pressure into jungle with that advantage. and maybe Casey can circumvent that by pressuring through mid into bot lane. But I doubt sincerely they are going to be strong enough to get to that point, because in the end, Casey's biggest strength when it comes to the LEC beyond the bot lane laning is also team fighting. And if I'm going to sit here and say that Casey is going to out team fight a T1, even in the shittiest games that Doran and Faker play in their lane phase, they are very good team fighters. They find the right angles. They understand how to create space. I think the best example is that disgusting Olaf game that Doran played, where he was 0-3 and got solo killed. And then in the end, he ended up being like a massive threat in terms of just his target acquisition and understanding space. So I think the matchup, while fundamentally very interesting, I think they are too similar to create like an upset win against T1. It's just hard for me to imagine.
Are you a T1 believer, Keire?
Like, the problem is that, like, I'm a T1 believer in the sense of, like, I don't think the teams at this tournament going in are as good as people think. And I think a patch refresh suits T1 because it gives them a new vector for overcoming HLE. I don't think T1 could have beaten HLE on the previous patch. I think with the fact that people's thinking is going to change, and more likely HLE's thinking is going to change, and you're going to have possibly new picks and stuff, I think it's going to give T1 new avenues to try and find victory. And I think, I was speaking about this before, I think the fact that they are actually in play-ins is an advantage, specifically for T1. T1 heat up as tournaments go on. It's like that, what I said, that thing about them actually playing like IG was actually like good for like T1, because first of all, it eliminates IG early, and then it like heated them up for like the rest of the tournament. And Faker teams historically, the longer the tournament goes on, the better they get. Relative to level. So I think it's, yeah. I don't know if so much I have them as favourites. I think I would probably still have HLE as my favourites for the tournament, but I would definitely, I would maybe even have them second. Probably second favourites coming in.
Because I actually think that, like I said at the beginning of the show, I think the problem is people are just doing that whole, like, it's another year when they won Worlds. So it's like, yeah, but the Peers roster didn't. Like, the Peers won. What's funny is, even though I say they're more streamlined, they could also end up having the best bot lane at the tournament, which case they can win the tournament through that alone. Like, Peers could be the MVP of the event, and then all of a sudden it's a different type of T1, isn't it? But I don't know. I actually sort of have my reservations on this one. Like, I actually feel like BLG should be better. Maybe Hammer Life is better. Let's switch to those two then. So, everyone else on the show, in theory, they've all done it for you, Keire. They're all just taking BLG. It feels like everyone's taking BLG, and the same night's going to be the MVP. Is Keire on the BLG train? Because didn't you do a hot take saying they could fail at this tournament?
Yeah, I think they could. Get, because they're going to draw T1. I think T1 could probably beat them. I think T1s will be, at that point in time in the tournament, will be relatively favoured, and then I think they could meet a variety of lower bracket opponents and lose early on. I don't think they'll lose first round in the lower bracket. I think they could start losing it about the second round. The reason is like, I think, here's my problem with BLG. I think a lot of people get a lot of credit saying names that aren't just basically like Knights. I tweeted out, really, if Knight gets like 10% worse, this team doesn't work. It just literally ceases to exist. Like, this is some fucking Atlas Shrugged shit. Like, this is ridiculous. Like, it's the most ridiculous carry jobs ever. Like, Ben's good, like, and he's really good, but he's really, really good, like, 60% of the time, right? Viper's actually just not even, I wouldn't even say he's like good or like elite. I think he's very, very mediocre. I think him and On's laning is fucking shocking. And then you've got Jun. And yes, Jun was really, really good at first stand. But Jun is, as good as he is, he's also part of that loss condition. And him and On are, if people don't know, him and On are the two biggest voices on like BLG. It's just a matter of fact, if you like listen to like their snippets and comms and what's been reported about them, right? If you think Knight is going to be the best player at this tournament from start to end, he's not going to like trip up, he's going to just like massacre everybody, he's just going to slaughter everyone in every single pick, and Jun and On aren't going to send it, then I can respect that BLG are your favourites, because Knight looks unstoppable. Like, he genuinely looks like he is going to plough absolutely everybody at this tournament. The problem is that if we look at like League of Legends history, the only like players that tend to actually like come in and just be the outright best player, like even take Chovy in 2023 spring when he went to MSI. Chovy was amazing at MSI. He was even better in LCK. He actually came down like a little bit. And I think it was like, sorry, it was not 23, 24, sorry.
I think 24, yeah.
Yeah, 24, yeah. So like 24 Chovy, spring, best player, one of the best players I've ever seen. MSI happens, he did come down a little bit. You know what I mean? And I don't think BLG are good enough to be able to handle Knight coming down that little bit. Now, I appreciate what you were saying earlier, Thorin. Yeah, Viper can step up, right? But Viper is an ADC player. He does not step up the same way Knight steps up. As in, like, the way Knight is good right now is so unfathomable. Like, it's so crazy. Like, I was not joking when I said to people, I was like, there is barely a bad game in LPL playoffs, even in all the losses. There's like a game where like Jun and On like combined for like 8 deaths. There's like a Nymaera with 4,000 gold lead, and Knight almost brings the game back from the abyss on LeBlanc. And he like fucks up once and it's too much. And that's against WE, mate, who might have like this stylistic counter. I don't think there's a stylistic counter. I actually think Jun sometimes just can't actually thingy win conditions. I actually think Jun has like strategic deficits in his game of like understanding. And so he could actually be like baited into like matchups that like Monkey will just like run him down. This is something like Cubby used to do to like BLG and draft. He would like pick all these like stuff. They would have no terrain scaling options, and then he would just pick Seraphine and Olaf, and then they would just like run through it. And the only way BLG learnt to beat that was Anivia. On learnt like Anivia, and what's his name? Ben had Yorick, and they had to leave it up earlier in draft because they knew the Olaf pick was coming. So I don't know, like. I think they are like will be a good team. I think they're soundly third or like second, depending on. I've not really like hanged up like the matrices. It's a rare time where I've not really went back and watched all of it. But yeah, the thing is, this team is so fragile to like. Even if Knight is the best player in the world, I think Knight's been the best player in the world at like 3 different tournaments, and I've watched his team shoot him like like so badly he couldn't win it. Like, I watched them at Worlds 2024, where, like, Jun and On decided they didn't want to be world champions. I watched it on GDG, where fucking the Patriot Act came into effect, and Kanavi and Ruler forgot, like, fucking, that they were playing for a Chinese team, and that like, they just started... I literally said this to Rich. I nearly lost my fucking mind. I said to him, how many times have you ever seen players as good as Kanavi and Ruler kill themselves with bard portals? Before that game and after that game, and he went, I don't know why that's got anything to do with it. By the way, I went and counted it. They've never done it since. They've done it 8 times in that series alone, and they tilted the fuck out of me. What? I still wake up fever dreams. Like, no, don't go under the tier 2 turret, Kanavi and Belvev. Don't take the bar portal and Keire sit in there. Like, bro, it's mental. So
stay away from those sand soldiers. They'll kill you. What are you doing?
Exactly. Yeah. So. You know what I mean? I've seen him be the best player in the world plenty of times, and his like teammates have dragged him to their best.
Because he's an LPL viewer, he's got like permanent PTSD where the second you remind him he's back there, like, no, get out, what are you doing? No TS, what are you doing?
Like it is what it is, and even though like historically actually like Knight plays really well at like MSIs, probably one of his like best tournaments.
Yeah,
even last year at 2025. Like, they were nearly losing to NA guys, and Knight's having to pull out like a 12-0 and 20 performance on Galio. Like, everyone, by the way, similar teammates, they had a way worse jungler, but all the same guys, you know, they were all Elk, On, Ben, they weren't the people like her. Ben didn't put on the fucking carry, like, top pants and fucking dominate the game. No, it's like, the stakes always tend to fall at Knight, and I think that's like a thing for fragility.
Yeah, by the way, I actually think that series where BLG, the whack one with Beishwan, beat FlyQuest, is just what killed all that shit of FlyQuest type. Like, they're really good, you know, they all speak shit, and then everyone just didn't give a shit anymore because everyone knew that wasn't even a good BLG, for fuck's sake. So if you can't beat them in a BO5, just give up all hope in it, like it's over, boys. So, all right, here's the question though, Keire. I've saved it till now. Right. The reason why I actually think it's fine for people to default to, actually, maybe BLG is the best team, and maybe they're going to win this one too, and the Golden Road continues, is because, like I said, T1 isn't really T1, and we've never had a team like this in our life. Like, I feel this is such a unique appearance for a Korean team because on the one hand, they've got like the veterans, like they've got Gumayushi and Zeus who've won the world, etc. You've got like Zeka's in best form, Kanavi's in insane form. Delight, as we point out almost every week on something, he's been something of a sore spot at times. He's had his moments where he's looked off his game, etc. Right? Hanwha Life. Do they perform? Are they going to be a big team? Are they going to be at least are they going to win? What do you think? If you say BLG's not going to win, surely Hanwha Life's winning by that logic.
So here's the thing. I think we have seen this team before. It's a home team. I think we've seen these types of teams like millions of times before. Like, I think this is just like a very classic style home team. Home, historically, out beyond JDG, the super team, loves Kanavi. Like, just love it, right? And then a top laner who is amazing with and without resources. Zoom in the past, remember that guy? Arguably the best top laner in the world until he didn't get to go to an MSI because of a specific event.
So it was until he made the mistake of daring to cross one of the curses of the LPL. He was like, "Oh, I'm a fucking sick player. Tell you what, I'll just go play with Knight. That'll probably work out great." And that was the point where Knight's career was like, everyone who you play with sucks dick at Worlds. Like, brilliant goal. So he was gone by he was even at the end of the season. Okay, so what else with him? What else? So
I think Home is really, really good at getting the most out of like really like sharp players who have defined styles. It's like it's why he works so well for the GDG super team. I think drafting is a real sore spot for Home because he is one of these guys reportedly that's like a believer in like player empowerment, where he will like give players the picture BLG Game 5 draft against T1. T1 have the better draft, but BLG have got the Jax, the Are, the Rel, you know what I mean? They've got their iconic, like, well, we're on our power. That's a home draft. That BLG Game 5, and if you look at that and you agree with that ethos, you understand Home, right? But if you don't agree with that ethos, then you understand, you'll still understand.
Do you agree with that ethos?
If you have players as, like, good as Knight, you probably, like, should do it, but you really do need to have like specifically.
What if you have Zeka and Gumayushi and Delight?
They are Zeka on specific champions and Gumayushi are players of that caliber, are as good as Knight, and they're like little sphere. And then like Zeka on like specific champions. I've always said this, like Zeka back in the day when he played against Knight, I'll bring this forward. Zeka actually historically has a terrible matchup into Knight, by the way, everyone. I don't know if you know this. The only time Zeka done well was at Worlds. Where they played in the group stage and they still split 1-1, and Knight's team was terrible even at that like World Championship. Zeka like got bodied at Worlds, he got murdered all the time in the LPL because like Zeka was like the hands kid on Zoe and Jace, and Knight was going to be like, "Oh, you want to have a hands fight? Ah, well, sucks for you." So yeah, but Zeka's matured a lot more in terms of his strategic understanding. He's become basically more of. It's like he's forgone more of like his like variance and showmaker, and he's became more like Chovy in terms of like the consistency and late game team fighting and stuff like that. But I think Home really gets the best out of a lot of these players, particularly like Gumayushi, who like very much likes very specific ADCs, and on those very defined and specific ADCs is one of the best in the world on them. So I think he's actually really well suited to this team, and I think Zeus is like one of the best top laners that you could have paired with Home once she leaves like the LPL. Like for example, I think like I always forget his name. Who's the top laner for DK? I can't remember his name. Jiwoo. I think Home would be terrible with Jiwoo, right? I don't think they would like work stylistically, but I think like your Keens and your Zeuses would work really, really well in terms of because they provide Home that like flexibility that it likes to like leverage. And obviously still got Kanavi. So when you've got the two people together, they are one of the best combinations in League of Legends history. Kanavi plus Home is unbelievable.
Equals MSI 2026, correct?
I think so. I think they'll win it.
And who will the MVP be?
That's hard. That is really, really hard to tell. My gut tells me it will actually be probably like Guma because of how like they play and like the platform it'll be put on, but the actual real MVP will be Kanavi, as in like the visual MVP of the stats and the bullshit and the fucking confetti. They'll be like, "Oh my god, Gumayushi triple kill!" Like fuck up, like.
But he also does a French guy Thorin like you. Did you teach him this shit?
That was pretty good. I can't lie. That wasn't bad.
But if you're like a wise sage like myself, right? Okay, you actually understand that really either Kanave or Zeus is the best player on this team.
Sure.
Most like I was a Kanave believer, and as I've watched more of HLE, I'm kind of like between worlds right now. I've not decided. If I could give it to home, I would, but no, not really. There's no case for that.
There should really be like a warning on screen when he's about to do that. And like the way that French accent was so aggressively came out of nowhere. It's good. But also, one thing I've realised is there's certain words you learn that when a Scottish accent says them in English, are just chef's kiss. Like when he said the word murdered, like murdered. Fucking hell, that's pure bit. That's pure Braveheart. I love it. Okay. All right. What about this then? So if they all win the tournament, all right, I tell you what I was thinking there, by the way, is the obvious angle people are missing here is if you actually do think Animal Life is better than T1, and if you actually think BLG can fail and Animal Life can win, people aren't ready for this. Bro, what's going to happen if Zeus and Gumayushi win MSI in a national tournament? What, without T1? Like, that's going to make a whole interesting discussion with that one right there, because I almost thought the gag in Korea was you like split ZOGFK up separately and then they collectively kept T1 out of it, like had Gen.G out of it. So I think that would be smart. By the way, imagine how insane the hype for Worlds would be. If first stand was won by BLG, MSI was won by Handwell Life, and then God only knows, who even knows for Worlds? I think that would be the most crazy wide open Worlds you could ever imagine. So yeah, interesting.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Right. All right. Well, I'll tell you, I'll ask one last quick question before we go. So I've done the MVP, I've done the winner, etc. Right. Here's the last question. I want you to pick one big name for me who's actually going to do badly at MSI. Not the team. What player is going to, who's going to underwhelm? Who's going to have the shit show? Who's going to be the Dardate Award winner, as it were, of MSI?
See, the thing is, it's like, by fan perspective, because I actually think they're not going to do well, it's going to be Knight. But I don't think Knight's going to play badly. I think Knight's going to, the team's not going to do well. Okay. And then Knight, because they're going to go, you've told us Knight was the best player. Yeah. Like, and by the way, I'm not even doing this as like some sort of like counter signaling where I could be like, oh, if they do well, it's all Knight. Like, Ben is really, really good, and he was better than Knight in select games at like first stand, and he really did pull up his end of the bargain. But I think a lot of people forget Ben went back to the LPL and was just a fine, good top lane player, and Knight just didn't stop being great. Like, and that's the difference. The consistency level is crazy. I just don't think it's going to lose. I actually think it'll be Knight probably. Optically, I think one of the TES stars is most likely due it. Like, I think Cream could get absolutely like bummed out, or Tian or Jackie-Love, and because everyone knows their names and they get like memed on, like I think they're due. Like they're probably like due something. And plus, like if any of those players end up in like a pressure situation, the way they lose is iconic. Like their mistake isn't just like bad; it's like laughably like screen share it, 10,000 up likes on like Reddit bad. You know what I mean? Like, actually, that's mainly just Jackie-Love and Cream. Tian just goes invisible. Like Tian just like turns off his brain and just kind of like full clear jungle. He's kind of got like that Tarzan disease. But like I think they're probably one of the ones that's due to be like Daddy awarded for this event, if not like the fan optics of like everyone said Knight was the best, and then they're out in 4th or 5th place. Ha ha ha! BLG Golden Road, Faker. Guma stopped another Knight championship, something like that.
Okay. I'll say maybe it could even be Ben, because actually people are going to live off first stand where he was insane. But I thought he had the odd weeks in the LPL where he was down. The key thing is anytime he came on, he was mega again. So it just made you forget the odd week that was dodgy. Who knows? I think actually a lot of fans just assume every time, you can tell they don't watch the LPL, they just assume every tournament he's going to be the best top player or smash everyone. So I think Zeus has got the team to do it, mate. I'm actually, like I say, it's one of the few times I'm not going to pick one. I actually think they're both 1A, 1B. Handwell Life and BLG are both mega. That's why I'll be if T1 wins this one, I'll be mega impressed, bro. Like, I feel like of all the ones, it's the least likely they win. Whoever it is beats them, one of the two.
That's fair. That's fair.
All right, that'll be the end of this segment. We've got one last person. It's going to be Cubby. So we're going to talk a little bit of LCS as well, some other things. So we'll see you in a minute after that. Now, obviously, doing these pre-shows where it's like a preview of the event is a classic of Summoning Insight, but this message is sponsored by Raycon. How about the Raycon Everyday Earbuds Classics? Obviously, we've talked about them many times. I like to use them in the gym, or maybe when I'm on a walk around, or maybe you're cooking something You know, the kids, they say they like to cook. Well, while you're cooking, you might like to listen to things. And if you want to block sound out, you can use the active noise cancellation. If you don't want to, if you want to hear ambient sound, you can turn that off. It's nice in that sense. It's got all different colours. If you're one of these people who wants to match it and accessorize, you might as well go, what was that, like a blue or a purple one there? What colour is that? Looks like purple to me. I'm mildly colourblind, so it's all good. I just use the black ones, therefore I don't have to worry about what colour it is. You can also... there's a 30-day happiness guarantee. So also they're actually confident that you will enjoy them once you have them. And I would just say, I always describe Raycon as they're a really good like min-max on the price versus quality in the market. So 3 million happy customers say it's excellent. So obviously you can go to buyraycon.com/LFN, get 15% off. Thanks to Raycon for sponsoring. That's buyraycon.com/LFN, 15% off, including the everyday classic earbuds. Okay, right, Cubby. Let's talk LCS Pro, because I will say, I think this might be, look, I know last year technically was the ultimate depths because it wasn't even the LCS, it became the LTA, and then like slots were given away to South American teams for the internationals, so it's kind of a dark time, but I think this year is the year people have been the most cynical about LCS, and with people, I include myself, because I always told people, this is how this year went in LCS for me. I looked at the rosters at the beginning of the year, and I was like, you know what, this isn't actually that bad. Like, hey, Liquid squad looks kind of interesting. Maybe they can be like a sleeper. First split, though, it was just the C9 and Lion show. And because of how it even went in the final, which is like, no, so it's still just like inspired, just Blabber just hands inspired every championship. Like, you take it, mate, you first. Like, that's not even interesting. So then this split, okay, now Cloud9's really good in the legacy. Maybe they're really actually good. They didn't end up making it, but fair enough. Liquid came on strong. We had a third team that was in the mix there. You can even say every now and then you had a bit of FlyQuest here and there to be a bit of spice, a bit of an interesting pick. Right? We have arrived at the end, though, at a position where a lot of people think it's mainly just the Lion show. It's basically, by the way, everyone's putting the entire LCS region on Inspired's back. So he hasn't even got FlyQuest anymore with all these. Everyone's just saying it. Inspired, basically. They're treating him like Skumon in G2. He's got to be the guy who performs. Do you see Lion as, I mean, were they the clear-cut best team for you?
I mean, in playoffs, they were. I feel like the way that they play is kind of similar to how Inspired and FlyQuest plays, which is a lot of the mid game. They're going to drop objectives to try and get farm on their carries. And then they're going to use that to win later fights as they kind of close the gap on gold. I think a lot of the times they play scaling. I feel like in LCS, that's just the best way to play in this region. It always has been. I mean, how many times have, especially me as a tier 2 caster, like I've seen a lot of top laners try and go up and be competitive, and they just aren't. They're trying to play carries. I feel like playing tanks and scaling has always been the way that this region has been ran. And it feels like Inspired has the best read on that. I think the best hope for the LCS coming in is that I don't have hopes for TL in the play-ins, but at least we're sending two teams that have different styles. Like, I mean, TL is going to play to fuck you from level 1. They're going to play the game from level 1. That's how every spawn team is always operated, and I appreciate and respect that. Lion does not approach the game the same way, but I really feel like, I mean, Inspired obviously is the player that runs the region, but being joined by Saint and Berserker as well, Saint kind of came into his own as the player that I don't want to say was promised, but was expected when he was coming out of the LCK Challengers League. I remember going over a lot of tape of him versus Loki at the time when both came over at the same time. And it was very much Saint is the player that had the mechanics, whereas Loki, for me, felt like more of a cultural fit into C9. And I think that paid off for C9 last year. Saint this year feels like in year 2, he was fucking bad in the regular season for like split 1. I was kind of mad. And then halfway through the split in the playoffs, he turned it around and he was first team all-pro, and I felt like was the mid laner to beat. So for me, Lion very much is the team that, like, yes, Inspired is the brains, and I think strategically Lion is very good at slowing the game down and playing out the games the way that they need to play. But a lot of their might comes from the fact that Saint and Berserker were the two best players in the 2 carry roles in their positions this split, and that showed in playoffs. And transitioning that to the international stage has always been difficult for NA teams. So I think on one hand, the fact that Lion does have a style that they can rely on, that I feel like ignores some of the fights and laning, could help them get to later stages where, you know, that was the strength of FlyQuest. They took scaling comps. They were okay going down and seeding early, and then were able to bounce back into the game with Inspired. I feel like that identity has shifted over to Lion very much. And I think that that's a decent way to play into some of the Western teams or Eastern teams, because you aren't going to outhands these guys in lane. You're going up against the ping diff, the server population, and the skill that is really hard to train up against every single day. So I appreciate that Lion has that same approach, but it never worked for FlyQuest. And do I necessarily feel like this team is better than the FlyQuest team? I think mid and AD are better, and top and support are worse. And I thought the FlyQuest team was a little bit better. So kind of on that parameter, I don't know if I have more hopes for Lion heading into this tournament. And we'll see what the bracket ends up looking like. But I think that, like it has been for the past 7 years, it's going to be pretty tough treading for NA teams. And the FlyQuest team got close, but never found that win. So that's kind of the monkey that Lion has to get off the back, not just for Inspired in themselves, but also for the region.
Yamato, are you a Lion believer? Are you skeptical? What do you think?
I'm not a believer at all. I do agree with the notion, though, in terms of, it kind of reminds me of the era of when Team Liquid was like the best team coming out of North America, when they had a very specific style, TSM as well. It was basically like the Bjergsen Doublelift ran teams, where they were the masters of winning North America and did it consistently, because they basically did the formula of like playing into bot lane, playing a scaling game, and then just winning at the Drakes. And then always when it came to translating that into international play, it always came with disappointments. I don't know how many group stages that just went to shit when they were in groups that could have been won. I remember specifically 2018, there was the Africa Freaks group where they had potential. I remember other versions of Doublelift teams and Bjergsen teams that just didn't do well enough internationally. They couldn't go over that finish line, no matter how good they might have looked domestically. And I think similar to that, I do think that Lion, in terms of how they beat everyone in North America, the passive approach in terms of being able to map out the game in such large segments where they can look ahead and it's like, all right, we're going to take a fight at this Drake, we're going to skip, and then we're going to lean into the fourth Drake fight, and we're going to all in there, and we're going to just set up a trade because we know the weaknesses of our opponents. I think that's something that is going to be very tough to replicate, not because I think it's the wrong approach to be different when it comes to internationals when you are on paper weaker. It's just that I think that version of play is very disagreeable when it comes to what the meta currently is. I think you compare it to any of the other finals across the globe when it comes to the big four regions, the pacing of the games is just way higher. The fights around objectives are very frequent, and the amount of fake pressure that needs to be answered really leans into a heavier chaos. And I think that Lion's slow play style is very good at beating the North American teams, but I think the translation there is going to be very tough. I think that usually what we always see when it comes to underdogs beating better teams is very strong early game paired with, unique nuance in how they draft. Because even though FlyQuest took Gen.G to 5 games and everyone remembers the unique champions that they picked, I think a big part of that was just how much better they were in the early game that actually qualified them into the game. And that was, of course, due to the fact that their bot lane was just simply laning better than Pays and Lehens in that series. And I don't know if they can do that here at, of course, MSI. I think the opposition is just a little bit too tough. And considering they already face against, the first round, they're lucky to face either Furia or Team Secret Wales. These are two teams that are very, very aggressive. So already that's a test in terms of a stylistic matchup that is very, very different from one another based on what we heard from, of course, Vestion that was here earlier talking about, of course, the Vietnamese team in terms of how aggressive they are. But I think that's in the Vietnamese League of Legends culture, right? To just play hard and fast. But I think there's a contrast there that I think eventually when you play against two good players, your style will be enforced if you're better in the lane phase. And I think that's where the music will stop for Lion here at this tournament.
Who is the team, if you had to call a crazy upset for Lion, who's the team most likely for it to happen, Cubby?
I mean, Top Esports is the weakest team out of the LPL and the LCK coming in. I think that for me, when Busio went over to EU, I'm not sure if I had a tweet on this, but I really felt like this split was set up where I think in the past we've had pretty competitive matches between NA and EU for the past couple of years. It's been fun. But I really felt like Busio going overseas kind of solidified the fact that there were going to be 2 to 3 teams that I felt like would be better than the NA teams, because a lot of the NA teams hit the reset button this year. And that was my fun, stupid tweet last year was that before MSI said that LCK teams wouldn't drop a best of 5 for the rest of the year, which happened. And a lot of that was based on, I think, the reads that they had on Fearless Draft and how they played, but also a lot of the projects they had were like 2-year projects or adjustments of 2-year projects. Whereas the LPL, like, I mean, BLG were swapping up Shadow Beishuan, Top Esports also, I think they were the only team that was kind of solidified. It was either them or IG, as I'm trying to rack my brain. But I think the best hope for Lion is probably to you got to look at Top Esports and G2, because I'm in the camp with Yamato. You know, as much as I appreciate that they're bringing in a different strategy, yeah, I mean, I don't believe that Dokla is going to be able to have the same impact on mid games, just because his laning phase is not going to put him in the same position that he was able to find in LCS, where he definitely wasn't the strongest laning top laner, even if his impact in the games was really high. Outside of the laning phase, I just think that the
Let me ask you something on that line, because like, I'm only going, I have no connections to the LCS scene. I don't even try and reach out now. If people don't know, one of the problems that Summoning Insight has is we used to just do the show, not always live, years and years ago. So because we could record it anytime, we used to have a lot of NA guests. But in the modern day, we do the show at like afternoon European time. So there'd be no point even inviting guests, and we don't even have guests now anyway. So I don't actually know any behind the scenes info about LCS. So let me ask you the following. As an outsider, just reading Reddit and watching like basic content, it was told to me that because Dokla was never supposed to be online, it was supposed to be that Korean guy that they couldn't get their visa for, right? When he played this split, they recruited that guy Castle from Disguised, and the premise was, well, it's probably because like they don't think Dokla can stand up internationally, so they want this guy, because he's like a Korean top laner, to come in at some point. Now obviously they didn't use him in the playoffs, so they just used Dokla and they won anyway. Is there actually some rumor, like is it possible he will play in this tournament? Does anyone know? Like, was the way I set it up there was something that was implied to you?
I don't believe I don't expect to see him. I think the Castle, like, I think strategically there could be real use for him, because there are certain champions that he plays just straight up better than Dokla. He's a really good Kansai player. I trust him a lot on the more traditional, Korean tops we've always seen, like Gnar, Renekton, Kansai. I feel like he plays that triangle better. Whereas Dokla, I think Dokla just fits the team better because he reads the map better at the later stages, which is where Lion's going to try and win. And I think it gives the team more flexibility in draft. A big part of the story of when they won going to first stand was he was playing the Varus top and the Vayne top. And I remember back when Dokla, it was my first split covering NACL. He was the first winner of our Most Valuable Prospect Award, which is pretty much like, it's the idea of the award is it was a wins above replacement. So like the baseball stat, if you were to start LCS for the next 2 years, and we've had some pretty good winners, like Busio won, Masu won. I think that the people that have won that award have gone on to do well. That's what he was averaging up over 36 games. I think he was up 1,700 gold to 15. They played through top a lot and they bombed out in playoffs, but he was able to play a lot of the carries and the range tops well. And his ability to actually play that on their way to first stand was a big part of the reason they got there with that strategic flexibility. We haven't seen that as much in this run, but it's something that I still trust he can have in his back pocket. And I feel like he has more range than Castle. So between that and being a more veteran voice with how they won, I don't expect to see Castle. I haven't heard anything on that. So I'm not exactly sure if we see Castle or not. Again, I think that mechanically, I think Castle matches up better in lane versus the players they're going to be going up against. But the way that Lion's been winning games, Doak will fit that formula better.
Right, Yamato, if you are Liquid, congrats. You get to go to MSI. Your prize is you have to play T1 in the first round. What do you think of Liquid in this context?
It's very, very tough, definitely. I think that in terms of upset chances, I do think it's like Team Liquid as a team, I do think that the majority of game states they found themselves in, even when they were not winning as much, or like when this team was doing surprisingly bad, they came out of early games in good positions. They could just never convert, which was so strange to see from a Coach JJ led team. But it kind of reminded me of some of I remember like when Team Liquid did the run at the World Championship, it was like their game against Weibo, game against LNG. It was like very good game-winning position, but then the execution in like a Drake fight or a Nash fight was just kind of falling short. But obviously the makeup of this team is completely different, because I do think Jose Diodo is just the main guy. And I think that in a jungle pool that is so exciting, it's hard to stand out. But in a different MSI, maybe Jose Diodo would be able to stand out. It's just that every team's jungler is like a name that everyone's hyping up. You know, whether it's Owner or Kanavi or Skimond or Inspired, it's like the list is demonic when it comes to the jungle role. And I do think that Team Liquid, if they're going to find success, it needs to be, you know, I need to see 100 Thieves Quid. I need to see 100 Thieves Quid. We are slowly getting there, but I feel like we're far from it. I just need the stars really to align in terms of the peak level of these guys when it comes to like Eon and Coach JJ. If the image of what I thought they could be at the beginning of the year is the one that is fulfilled here, maybe they can cause some damage. But their gameplay has been very far from that vision, and I do think that they managed to get to the finals due to issues that C9 presented rather than anything else, because the setup for those fights that they won were on paper, you know, setups that were losing, but they managed to win because C9 were tripping over themselves. That's not something that you're going to get away with, because the setups of the Drakes, the setup of the objectives, I think is just too flawed. So we might see games where they are like 3k gold ahead, 4k gold ahead against a T1, and then there's going to be like a crucial Drake fight at 22 minutes that they're just going to lose 5-0, and I just imagine that to be the picture of Team Liquid at this tournament. And then in the matchup against KC, I mentioned before that KC and T1 is very similar. I expect those games to also look similar, where maybe we're going to be in situations where Team Liquid have leads against KC, and then it's going to be like a 40-minute drawn-out game that is going to end on like some freaky Drake 8 situation where KC is going to get the Elder and win the game just because their setup and team fight is better. So that's where my concerns come in from Team Liquid. But the early game is strong enough to be interesting, I would say.
Yeah, that matchup, they got to win mid-jungle against KC. Like, I mean, Kana and Kalist and Busio, I prefer in the matchup. But Jose, he would have been my MVP vote. I know it was Vulcan MVP. I don't want to take anything away from Vulcan, but
Same.
I thought Jose had a dynamite split and was doing a lot of jungle right now is how can you turn a small lead into a big lead? Jose was doing really well doing that. Now, I think sometimes TL got a little bit too fast over their own skates and snowballing, which as Yamato pointed out, but this is a team where I think those problems are easier to fix than getting the leads in the first place, in a sense. And I feel like that's the difference from TL from Split 1 to Split 2, is that they did improve that, even if I do feel like C9 was the biggest story, just because of how hard they flopped out. But yeah, that's got to be the formula if you're TL to win. It's, can Jose put his best foot forward? Can we see the best of Quid, who has shown that he can compete internationally when he is playing well? And Jan and Core have to as well. I mean, I think that other bot lanes I prefer more coming into the tournament, but Jan and Core historically, look at the successes that TL have tried to have, or at least games they've won internationally. It has come off of those guys' performances. I mean, even thinking back to like the Jan Samira game that took a game off T1, right? I kind of going into the weird picks and also early laning, preferring that. But I think that any formula that TL is going to win, it's got to be, can we snowball hard enough and not make mistakes on our own? Which, as Yamato pointed out, yeah, they do have issues setting up objectives. So we'll see if they can at least clean up that aspect of the game. But yeah, they're a much better early game team coming in than Lion. I just think that a lot of people look at TL as being the third best team in play-ins, and I would agree.
The obvious problem is, no matter how good you are, if your Jose Diodo is, you might have to play against like fucking Orna, Lee Sin, or Neferi. He's got some scary picks there. I agree on the KC one. That's much more interesting. By the way, the one angle I think people probably are sleeping on actually is, look, I know he didn't really come online until at the end of the last split, but I actually think Faker's had some sus games this split, so I could see Quinn having like a game or two where he can shine. The guy's got mechanics, he's got skills, right?
Yeah, I mean, Quid can play. It's Faker at an international. I feel like even if he struggled domestically and, even tournaments in Korea, it still is the expectation that T1 has deserved of like this team's going to show up at international tournaments.
Yes.
You really can't argue with the track record. And I mean, whenever you guys want to talk about some other teams too, I'm on the fade BLG train.
Yeah.
I think that it's kind of wild that BLG seems to be the unanimous favorites.
Okay.
I have a.
I think the craziest thing is, if you want to know how nuts it is, the only guy on the show so far who picked against them is Keire, who's normally the crazy LPL nut hugger. Like, yeah. So I think that's even a crazy warning sign. That's a canary in the coal mine, getting out the coal mine, guys. I know. Like, what do you think? You think they're gonna fuck it up? I
mean, I think that my read on BLG is a lot more having to do with the LPL as a league, like just overall. Knight is one of the best players in the world. I don't want to argue that, but what's his competition this year versus last year? I feel like last year's top esports AL and IG that went to Worlds are better than every team that they went up against in the LPL playoffs this split. And when I look at BLG, I agree with what Nymaera and they say that when you go up against them, you have to have a team that can match Bin and Knight, and there aren't a lot of teams in the world that can do that. That is the strength of BLG. But what I really prefer and favor when it comes to these tournaments is what are your matchups in Fog of War or the Fog matchups? Shoot it on. And I want to give On some kudos. I think this is the best form that I've seen from On as someone that really views On as a flipper, and kind of one of the reasons that the setups for BLG in the past, like this team for me is all brawn, no brain. I feel like every time I see BLG go in an international tournament, it's a different iteration of the same team where these guys are so fucking good, but it makes them so goddamn stubborn. Like they don't respect the rules of the game. And I feel like On has evolved a little bit more as a player with his weird picks and how he plays, where he has angles where it's a lot more consistent with how he's able to execute, whether it's meta or not. I just don't trust them against Owner Keire. Like, when have we seen a BLG go up against T1, a matchup that we've historically seen a lot, where they've been able, like, what's the track record in those series? It's been Owner and Keire just absolutely dog the map against those guys. And I don't see BLG being different against that, and really feel like their form coming in is kind of inflated just because I don't think the competition in the LPL was great. I mean, fucking Team WE was like one game away from actually being here. That's crazy. A team with Cube and Karis, guys that are kind of dogs in the LPL historically, almost were able to get here. And I think it really spoke to, I don't think BLG respected them the first time they went up against each other, and Team WE found a lot of angles. But I think that as the bracket kind of moved on and just I looked at the teams, I really feel like LPL had a stronger league last year than what they ended up having this year. I think it's going to really kind of hurt BLG coming in. I can point to 3 mids that are not here from the LCK that are better than Cream. Like, I thought Cream was playing really well this split. Like, I agree with Nymaera's diagnosis that this is probably the strongest split we've seen from Cream. But historically, who am I going to take in international? Cream over BDD, Chovy, or Showmaker? Probably not. So I really felt like Knight was he had a great split. Again, he's one of the best players in the world. I think there's an argument for him being the best, but I felt like he was inflated just because the competition in terms of teams and in his lane wasn't as good as what I'm used to expecting from the LPL.
Okay. Right. Well, in that case, if you are going to eliminate BLG, then is Hanwha Life the truth? Are they the best team?
I mean, I at least appreciate that this MSI might give us, what should have been an LCK final, because for whatever godforsaken reason, they don't want to give us that with the road to MSI. But I have a lot of faith that it's going to be HLE T1. I think that when I look at HLE, it's a Kanavi team, and Kanavi teams are so fun because it's so clear looking at Kanavi teams that they just operate through him, right? It really feels like HLE has embraced this, and this is an HLE that I think has showed enough diversity, which I think historically with Zeka in form, I think that his form just varies as a player. He's an elite player, but like it feels like every year there's a split where Zeka is just like God incumbent, and then for the rest of the year it's just like not there. I don't think that Zeka's like in like the peak form, but I think that he's in a form good enough where HOE can win this tournament. And how the game is played right now, there's a lot of changes being made. I think we're 2 patches removed from the last competitive games we saw at the highest level, and there were a lot of like small changes being made around, at least like with jungle. Like I think Nocturne losing 20 damage on Q is pretty significant. He's a champ that's been banned out a lot. I expect Jarvan to be banned for most of the tournament. I think that this is an angle where Kanavi can kind of dig deep, find some champions that not every other jungler in the tournament can play that might be meta, and that can be the real difference maker in getting HOE to get the international win over T1, which as you said earlier in the show, Thorin, I think that if it's a BLG win into an HOE win going into Worlds, that would honestly, for me, make for the most hyped tournament when it comes to the fall, just like with International League of Legends. So I have HOE T1 final. I think that BLG, I trust Kanavi and Delight, and I trust Owner and Keire a lot more than I trust Shunanon when it comes to how the game's played in Fog. I think at the highest level, you can be the best laners in the world, but you're going to find those advantages in Fog and how you can create Fog. And I think that's where the Korean teams have just always had massive edge against the LPL teams. That, and I don't like how the LPL teams have drafted, but that's been kind of talked about by some other folks. I've spent some really... I used the word stubborn a lot when I was going back over like the LPL playoffs. Whether it's picks, whether it's Drakes that you should or should not contest, which LCK has been a little bit stubborn in that too, in terms of setups. I feel like I use the word stubborn a lot more for the LPL teams coming in, and historically that's where LCK has really punished the LPL teams.
Would you push back on that, Yamato? You disagree?
I think I would push back a little bit on the notion that every time Shunanon has played against Keire and Owner that they were weaker, because there were 2 MSIs, 23, 24, where they were much better than them, I think. We had the world, like that same, the World Championship, I think On, of course, in 24 played quite poorly, and then last year's BLG was just weak because of all their jungle issues. But yeah, I think coming into this one, and especially what they showed with First Stand, I do think that in terms of what the meta is and what it became, I do think that a lot of things have been modeled around what BLG was in winter. And I think a lot of teams played catch up to that in terms of how important it is to play through the mid jungle support and how you connect together, and how mid is just the most central point in the map. And I think that HLE has really, really caught lightning in a bottle in the current style. I just have a lot of faith in the fact that the only team that can really disrupt the rhythm of Shun and On was Monkey, who probably, to me still, the first 5 minutes of the game, I think there's no better jungler in the world than Monkey.
Dude, get that guy in a team, man. Please, for the love of God. He's so fun to watch. I know, really, I mean, I remember last year, because Team WE promoted into Group Ascend in Split 2, and like halfway through the split, they were just on this massive win streak with pretty much the same team around him. And yeah, the guy has great reads in terms of how he plays the game. Please get him on a team. I feel like if he was more empowered, like the way that he sees it really is cool. Like that was one of the better stories, I think, out of all the regional playoffs WE's run. It would have been really interesting if they made it to this tournament. But
I've got an angle for you.
Please get him a team. Yeah.
Or just import him to the West. If we're going to gamble on like Asian players, that guy would cook in the fucking LEC or LCS Pro.
Yeah,
he'd be like the MVP. It'd be mega.
I believe that he's the biggest voice in his team, so that might be tough for language barriers.
Listen,
But
just let him go in. As soon as you see him go in, follow. There you go. Problem solved.
Yeah, he's so sick.
He's the laser pointer. You're the cats. Follow it.
No, for real.
That'll be very different. You have to understand.
Yeah.
Have anyone ever the Wily Coyote? I know exactly what.
No, I just brought them up, right? Because I don't think it's a shame for BLG to have lost one series when they were caught off guard by it, and then to have gone 5 games against it, because WE stylistically offers something very unique that nobody else does, which I think is important to disrupt BLG. And I think Kanavi is the only real jungler that can offer that. But even with that being said, it's a chess game with multiple layers, because I think for me T1 is a little bit lower than the other two, because you got Zeus and Bin in top. Whoever's going to have the best tournament in top lane might just win the tournament too. And then you have the dynamic of, very, very similar pieces in terms of what they offer to the team, with maybe Kanavi having more of a selfish style where Shun plays more for his lanes. There's some details there, but they mirror each other in many ways in terms of like what the ADC is on both of these teams, in terms of how supportive they are and they offer. I would give Gumayusi the edge, but I would give On the edge over Delay. Like there is, I can easily argue for either, but my gut call is just BUG in this moment, because I think the individual form and the potential patch changes, that's my biggest concern for HLE, is that I think if the patch and the tournament moves in a certain direction, I do think that this is where HLE will have to restructure. Keire, he talked a lot about how Home's teams like to play a very specific style. His teams have also faltered when the meta shifted and his team needed to play differently. This is where Kanavi fell. This is where JDG fell on their Worlds run too, where the meta shifted heavily, where they are leaning into something very hard. And I think the same thing can be said for the players too, whether it's Delight, whether it's Gumayusi, whether it's, of course, Zeka too. If the meta remains the same, HLE is going to be insanely dangerous. But if for some reason it shifts because T1 pushed something through and just convince people that playing through bot lane is the best way, or Syndra and LeBlanc are suddenly like really insane picks and you have to restructure your draft around them, then suddenly, I have less faith in HLE. But that's, of course, a very big if. I can't predict, what's going to happen in scrims right now.
I think the patch is actually a really interesting conversation coming in, because again, we're 2 patches removed from the last time we saw the highest level of play. There've been a lot of changes like being made. Senna was so disgusting on this last patch and got nerfed, and I'm really curious to see where she falls and what teams want to play her. Because I think the nerfs were enough to really push her down from what I expected in terms of priority. And a lot of the core mids got nerfed as well, with some others being buffed. I mean, if you're a Knight fan and a Faker fan, Syndra got buffed pretty significantly. Both those guys, I mean, really, their Syndras are fantastic. I think Jungle saw a ton of changes, like this last patch. It was the Olaf, Poppy, Kiana, and Zahan buffs. Which I think Scumans, I really liked the read on Zahan jungle. I thought he was really strong going into first stand, and G2 had a good read on that. I'm kind of curious if that comes back, because the E cooldown, getting 2 seconds on that matters a lot for your clear, and also just getting over walls and being active. So I'm really interested to see. I think the way that the game's played, they haven't changed enough of like the system for it to not be played through jungle. But a lot of the champions that were most effective in terms of how it was played through jungle, looking at like I think Nocturne losing 20 damage on Q rank 5 is I think significant enough where I don't know if he's gonna be pick ban anymore. I feel like Jarvan's the champ that I'm the one jungler that hasn't been went untouched. And I expect him to be banned or like really heavily prioritized, but I'm interested because I think that some of the mids that you play through in order to impact jungle, it's going to be a different pool. I still think we're going to see a lot of Rise, but like Cassio nerfs, the fact that champion was getting blinded is a huge problem. Like that champ just like how she's designed probably shouldn't be blinded, and her passive is still gives you ridiculous move speed where you can actually kind of get away with that with some of the back, because you're playing range into her, right, or control into Cassio most of the time. But the block being buffed is one that Zeka could really take advantage of. And I think some of the jungle pairings that pair well with LeBlanc also had some positive changes as well. So I'm kind of interested to see if she makes her way into the tournament at all, or where Syndra falls, because the Syndra got, I think, what, like
10 flat damage
ratio
on rank 1.
It's
10 flat damage is ridiculous.
It's so I'm really curious where that champion falls. So yeah, I think that she potentially could be like a really big pick. And there are a lot of mids that historically play that champion really well that are in this tournament.
You know how, despite the premise that EU hates NA and NA hates EU, well, obviously back in the day, though, we could always just cope if EU did bad. If like, right, fuck it, I'll watch Bjergsen and Jensen then because they were EU. Is KC of interest to you because of Busio?
Oh, God, yeah. I mean, so Busio, I interviewed him when he was 16. And I did a project actually kind of fun. It was with Manny Sanchez, who does Esports Garage now. I used to use him as my editor early on. And Manny's really talented and helps out with the LCS now and does the Esports Garage with Pastry Time. But I interviewed every player for the 100 Thieves Next team that Papa Smithy had. The only player that Papa Smithy pinged me afterwards about what I thought was Busio. And I've been really lucky to work with a lot of youth throughout my life. I was a camp counselor for 3 summers. Most of my families are teachers. So, volunteer working with a lot of youth. It's a lot of fun. That's one of the most impressive kids I've talked to, just like as youth, like, wow, just maturity level, not a 16-year-old, right? And now that he came out and said that his dad like competed for Team Poland and the Olympics. That
it's like a swimmer or something, wasn't he? Am I wrong on that? What was it he did? Wasn't it swimming?
Yeah, swimming. As
all right.
He was a swimmer. I think we tried to do we gave that to the LCS. We tried to do a story on it, and Busio was kind of like, no. So I've always known that, but it was never really public, so I never really talked about it. But the kid has some pedigree, and just watching
he says he went to the '92 Summer Olympics. Like, holy shit, fair enough.
Yeah, like how he's kind of scaled up and improved. He was always a pretty easy bet behind the scenes, just like talking from him. And I like to bet on the humans at the end of the day. I think that gaming, removes a lot of the physical attributes that you see in athletes. So you kind of have to bet on the humans. He was an easy human to bet on. And yeah, I keep up with LEC because him and JoJo being over there, still 2 of the most talented players that we've had come through here. And kind of a shame that they're no longer with us, but fun to see them playing
karma.
Really
you
well.
Took Ferguson and Jensen. We get fucking good JoJo and whatever. And you still got inspired anyway. So,
but don't you want what's best for them as well? Yeah. It's sending them to greener pastures.
Sincerely, yeah. I talked to Busio before he left, and he's like, the fan base that KC has can't compare to anything in NA, and he's right. The fan bases that MKOI and KC have created, regardless of what you might think of the fan base, they're massive. And it's the best opportunity for them. And, seeing them take photos with the fans for the homestands, that doesn't exist over here, which makes me sad, but definitely a win for them. And seeing them play at their best is good. So, yeah, I believe Busio. I still think that T1 gets out of this group, but we definitely pitched him as baby Keire. And I think that a lot of his play kind of fits that. So it'll be fun to see him go up against Thorin, Keire on the way in. And we'll see what KC can do, if they can do anything special. I feel like if T1 doesn't get out.
I'm willing to offer. We'll do a trade. You give us Inspired back. You can have Busio back. I think everyone's happy after that. It's fair.
That'd be a fun one, honestly.
KC, but
I think Jungle Pool, probably more competition for Inspired over there.
It's pretty banging, yeah.
And Busio coming over here again would be. I think that'd be fun homecoming. But again, the teams in NA. It's really hard to compete bidding wise going up against MKOI and KC because as contracts have gotten smaller. What you can do with content and numbers matters a lot more.
And it's going to blow your socials up and your profile. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, if you look at his Twitter, I think I tweeted about it at one point when he joined KC. I think that he 3x'd his follower account before he even played a game.
By the way, think about how crazy that difference is, because that used to be the TSM effect on people. If you went the other way back, but now 10 years later, or whatever, it's actually the opposite way around. It's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. I mean, kudos to those teams and how they've been able to turn some nationalism into a fun fandom. And definitely something that we haven't been able to capitalize over here in NA. But yeah, I try and I follow. I have more reason to keep up with LEC now. Because those kids are really talented kids and wish them nothing but the best. And they're playing really well over in the leagues. So I'm bummed that JoJo's not here, but still had a really good split. And we'll see if he can make it to Worlds. MKOI is probably the favorite to get to Worlds out of EU as the 3rd team.
Right. Here's the last question. So based on what you said earlier, you're taking Herbalife to win the event?
Yeah.
So who is the MVP?
It's got to be Zeka MVP. I think that looking at some of the other mids and also just the form that Zeka can hit, at first stand when HLE played last year, after they play their first series and you watch all the teams, you're like, okay, this is their tournament to lose. And Zeka was just straight up styling on people. I mean, they were playing Vladimir and flexing it around. I mean, the champion that has the least amount of pressure ever. And HLE's like, yeah, it's fine, doesn't matter. We'll just play this and get to the late game. We can try and style. I think that if it's going to be an HLE win, I think going in, look at that team or look at the players that are competing, and you probably don't expect it to be a Zeka MVP on paper. But if it's going to be an HLE win, which player is going to matter the most to me to step up? I appreciate Yamato saying Zeus. I think that that's whoever is the best top laner could easily win the tournament. I think that a lot of international tournaments in the past definitely have pointed to if you have the best top, your odds of placing well are very high. I think this one's got to be Zeka. I think there is opportunity in the mid pool because mid for me, across the board, probably not the strongest role, pound to pound, that teams are bringing. I feel like jungle and AD carry are the roles that I felt like every region kind of sent their best. And I think especially LPL, those playoffs are kind of dictated by AD carries. Whether like Gala and Hope had bad tournaments, and About stepping up was a big part of WE's success as well. I think that there's opportunity in the mid lane for Zeka. And if Zeka is at his best, he is a freak. So I'll take Zeka MVP and an HLE win over T1 in finals.
People aren't ready for it because the narrative's going to be too jarring. After Worlds 2022, we all went, well, you know what? That was some bullshit. If he wins MSI, listen, guys, he's done a career Grand Slam.
Yeah,
He'll have
he's got
won
it. Triple crown.
LCK, First Stand, MSI, and World. Bro, like, what even? Imagine telling someone in like 2020, yeah, by the way, he actually just wins everything later. But what a crazy turnaround, because I actually think he's completely like redeemed his whole career arc. He wasn't a fluke. He wasn't a flash in the pan. And if anything, I agree. He's in peak form right now. Like, it's actually doable. This is doable.
I think some of the champions that are being played around with too, like definitely fit him. Silas and the Blanc buffs. You're really happy camper if that's Zeka.
Absolutely.
Everyone's a sick Akali player in this tournament, by the way, which definitely going to be a contested pick. So yeah, I'm excited to see what he can do. And being paired up with Kanavi too. Kanavi's a player that he was part of the top esports curse, as you guys talked about earlier. I've come around on Kanavi. I kind of felt like he was a full clear. Like early on in his career, I felt like he was overrated. I think later on now, I've come around on him, and he's elite. And seeing what he's been able to do, like going over to LCK and getting the form in that league that he's gotten within 6 months of being back has been cool. So I think that if it's an HLE win, Zeka for me is the player that's got to step up or just be him the most if they're going to take down the other teams this tournament. So I've got HLE win and second MVP.
Who did you take, Yamato?
As my MVP? I don't know. I'm thinking Bin. I understand why people have worries about Bin, because he is very disinterested in a lot of regular seasons. But in terms of what his record is internationally, like just how he has played internationally outside of 2025 BOG, whether it's his MSI run when he was on RNG, whether it was when he was on Suning, or when he even, like the 24 run when they lost to Gen.G, like he was like what he did against T1 in those series was nasty. And in terms of them being in the game partially against Gen.G, it all came from him as well. And he managed to do so against some of the best. And I would even go so far that the time when they lost the World Finals against Zeus, I think that he was the better performer in the top lane, because Zeus had a very important role, but a smaller role on the team in terms of just being, Zeus's highlight reel that tournament was, outplaying Under the Tower with Gragas, which is very impressive. But in terms of the weight that he carried on his shoulder in those cities and what he does internationally, I do think that Bin is very special when it comes to this. And to follow my line of thinking, right, I do think that the deciding factor of who's going to win this tournament is going to be, like, we're going to walk away saying either Zeus or Bin is the best top player in the world. And I have to follow through on that line and give Bin as my name for the difference maker as to why BOG is going to win. But I understand people's concern, because there's periods where like Bin like goes home in the middle of a split and Shun has to like do this thing like to sprint back to his hometown, and he sees like all the remnants of his youth. This is why Bin is this way. He sees like the local shop or whatever. Like, I don't know what these stories do scare you, but I believe in Bin. I believe in Bin, and I believe in BOG.
That would be back-to-back MVPs too for him, by the way, because first stand, I think, probably MVP. So that'd be a crazy start to the Golden Road. And that's with the backdrop of Knight, conversations of being the best player in the world. So I think that'd speak to the identity of BOG very, very highly if it ended up being that. Yeah.
Right, next week we will be doing our show after the play-in, so we'll be ready for the main bracket at that point in time. Join us then.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. That was a lot of fun. And we'll see what happens in play-ins. If T1 gets upset, probably the biggest upset we've seen in a long time.